what was a loophole that you found and exploited the hell out of? Last summer, I went up to northern Michigan with a buddy of mine. He's got a nice summer cabin in a small town called Oscoda. It's a nice little place, with beautiful lake beaches and other fun outdoorsy stuff, if that's your thing, but there's not an awful lot to do up there otherwise. We walked from his cabin into the town, and walked into a closing Kmart. I walked over to the electronics aisle, hoping to find some bargains on video games. Unfortunately, they only had one crappy game, Putty Squad for PS4, and they had an awful lot of copies. I checked the price. They were on clearance for $14, but were marked at an additional 90% off, bringing the price down to a measly $1.40 each. I did the sensible thing that anyone else would have done and bought 20 copies, even though I had no interest in ever playing any of them, nor did I own a PS4. Here's the receipt for proof. After a weird look from the cashier, he removed the security labels from the games and sent me on my merry way with a bag full of sealed games I spent under $30 for. I brought them home with me and traded them into GameStop one by one every time I went, getting approximately $7 per copy in store credit. I traded in such a high volume of copies, I was banned from trading in games to GameStop. Unfortunately, it's a system-issued temporary ban to prevent people from loading off stolen goods. I just traded in my last copy last weekend when they were doing the 50% bonus trade-in credit promotion and got $10 in store credit. I made something like $150 in store credit total off of $28 plus tax, and even though this pales in comparison to some other posts in this thread, I consider this a victory and it makes for a funny story to tell. Story 2. In the 80s, Chuck E. Cheese's didn't shred the tickets you get out of their games and use to buy toys, candy, etc. My friends and I were biking one day behind a strip mall practicing our wheelies and jumps. We saw a worker throwing a garbage bag of tickets into the dumpster behind Chuck E. Cheese. We grabbed it and then started circling back about once a week. Garbage bags and garbage bags full of tickets. We were doing so well, one of my friend's parents got in on it. She would take the minivan behind there and have her kids load up. And this is why tickets are now shredded. I think I still have a huge stockpile of frisbees and stuffed animals in my parents' attic somewhere. Story 3. Around 5 years ago, I used to work as a sales rep at a cell phone booth. Every new smartphone that would be released, the wireless provider would usually send us a demo unit of that phone with a demo line. The demo line would have unlimited talk, text, and data, but would deactivate after 2 to 3 months. This was so we could show customers how the phone works with all of its features. One time we got a demo line that didn't expire after the 2 to 3 months, so my manager at the time told me to use it as my work line. I didn't want to carry 2 cell phones, so I canceled my personal line and used my work line as my personal too. Fast forward 1 year later, my manager is transferred to another store and we get a new manager. New manager has no idea about my work/personal line. I left the company 6 months later with my demo line, and to this day, I still use this demo line. Have not had a cell phone bill for over 5 years and counting. TLDR, got a cell phone line that I've been using for free for over 5 years. Edit. Just to clarify on a couple questions that come up a lot. I can upgrade the phone whenever I want, but I have to buy new phones for cash, rather than worry about contracts. The talk and text works fine in the US, but I'm limited to 1 gigabyte of data per month. The line does not seem to work internationally, but I usually use Wi-Fi anyways. Bonus story. Around 2 years ago, my phone got stolen from my car, along with my laptop, hard drive, and tablet. I was utterly devastated, but more for losing my phone line than anything else. After moping around for a few days, I started to think of ideas of how I could possibly get the magical phone line back. I called and texted the phone line non-stop, offering money for just my SIM card back, but no response. I decided to try a different approach. I called my old store I used to work at, pretending to be a customer. I asked for my old manager, but I was told there was a new manager and I got his full name. I called my carrier, remembering the protocol from my working days, pretending to be the new store manager, and I gave them our authorization code, which I luckily still remembered. Told them one of our demo lines was on the fritz and needed to transfer onto a new SIM. They ask for the phone number of the demo line. I give them the number and they say it's some special line that I have to contact some special department for. They transfer me to special department. I tell special department dude about the situation and he's like he can definitely do the transfer, but only through email requests. So I have to send him an email request of the transfer through our store email. Screwed! Another dead end. So maybe the magical phone line is gone forever. Looks like I have to pay for a phone like the rest of you peasants. But then I had a magical flashback to 5 to 6 years ago, when I used to work at the wireless store. My then manager asked me to create a store email for our team to use, for whatever use. I couldn't remember the password of that email, but I did remember I just made a regular Gmail account. So I made a new Gmail account for my old store and emailed the special department my phone line transfer request onto a new SIM card, under the guise of that store's new manager. The line was transferred within 2 hours and I got my magical phone line back. Look, this is a good story, but my God, this is a whole lot of work just to hang on to an ancient phone with 1 gigabyte of data. I mean, 5 to 6 years in technological terms and in terms of like the life of a cell phone, that is absolutely ridiculously old, man. Let it go, get a new phone, quit being a cheapskate, and pay for it. Story 4. My university requires that you change your password every few months or so. The new password can't be one that you've used in the past. Naturally, this sucks because I have to remember yet another password. But if you forget your password and reset it, it can be anything, and it counts towards changing your password. I've had the same password for my entire college career. Edit. Guys, I'm aware this is a security risk. You can stop telling me now. I change my important passwords, banking, health insurance, loan accounts, etc., religiously. Story 5. Complained to Chipotle corporate when the hours were wrong on the door and it was closed Sunday during my lunch hour. Got a free burrito card in the mail. Went back later in the week, ordered a burrito. Double chicken, extra beans, extra rice, grilled peppers, extra cheese, extra salsa, double guac. Oh crap, this thing is huge. You better double up the tortilla. Man, you should have seen this mother effer drawing up the wrapper with this black marker. Giant C, 2 circles around it, forward slashes, backslashes, guac times 2 circled, some Sanskrit, and I'm pretty sure even a tilde. He followed the burrito to the register like I was going to tuck it under my wing and march on the F out of there. He shoulder surfed the cashier while she rung up this $20 monstrosity. Should have seen the look on Dude Man's face when I pulled that card out and smiled and said, "Here you go." God, my coworkers are still laughing about it. Story 6. I was in 10th grade when rubrics had recently been made mandatory for all school projects. The marks had to be bucketed into different mandatory categories, and teachers were still getting the hang of it. For science class, we had to construct a leaflet for the endangered animal we were assigned. I was assigned the leatherback sea turtle, quite a majestic, soft-shelled turtle, the largest of all turtle kind. The rubric handed out with the assignment bucketed the grade equally into 4 categories: overall appearance, layout of leaflet, use of relevant images, and content. That's some bullcrap, right? 3 categories dedicated to appearance, 1 category to content. So naturally, I ended up handing in a piece of construction paper folded in thirds, covered in nothing but glitter, turtle silhouette cutouts, and about 15 fancy pictures of sea turtles. There wasn't a single word on that leaflet, barring the construction paper letter cutouts forming the words leatherback sea turtle, pasted in an art shape at the top of the leaflet. I got a grade of 75 out of 100. I mean, why wouldn't you try to at least put a little something, little bit of content in there, like a paragraph, a couple sentences? Why would you just go above and beyond to get a 75 and then completely punt the rest of your 25 points? That's not very smart. Sorry, buddy. Story 7. I hate having a great answer too late. I coach a high school team. We recently bought airfare with Spirit Airlines to take 9 students to a competition. 2 of the students canceled about a month out from the trip, and we had to replace them with 2 different students. Spirit Airlines policy: no name changes. Can't even pay a fee to change the name. The tickets are basically lost. I have to buy new tickets. Spirit's customer service is overseas, and they plainly don't care at all about customer service because they don't actually work for Spirit, etc., etc. Except that Spirit Airlines does allow passengers to correct misspellings, and these folks don't really recognize nonsense names. So over 4 calls, I changed the names of the canceled students to the names of the new students, 2 letters at a time. No one at Spirit customer service made a note, because who would care, and no one ever notices that the correct names during the intermediate steps were nonsense. Also, F Spirit. Story 8. I spent 5 years on a U.S. Navy submarine. Every 2 years, we would do a 6-month-long deployment called Westpac. On my second deployment, I got boondoggled with a few other dudes. Basically, the boat goes out for deployment without us, and we got sent to attend various training schools in Pearl Harbor for the first half of the deployment, then catch a flight to meet the boat. So we watched the boat stem off and then caught a flight to Pearl Harbor. We show up with our orders to check in, but there was some miscommunication. Office personnel done effed up. We aren't enrolled in any of our classes. We don't have barracks, meal chits, nothing. They had no idea we were coming. They give us something called a non-availability chit, which allowed us to stay at any reasonably priced hotel on the government's dime. So naturally, we found a palatial estate a block away from Waikiki. We show up for muster the next day, and the PO more or less just told us, yeah, I don't want to see you guys again, ever. We couldn't get a hold of our boat because it was underwater doing secret things. Shh. Once the yeomen got their crap on straight, they realized that our return plane tickets were already paid for and paperworked up, so they just said, F it, we'll do it live. We were getting a per diem and having our housing covered by the Navy. Never had to muster for work, never had to check in anywhere. On top of that, we were still collecting our normal pay and allowances, CPay, BAH, etc., for 3 months. I grew a beard, got high as F as often as possible, learned to scuba dive, did some surfing, had sex with a bunch of international tourists, went on pub crawls every weekend, did some hiking, lots of snorkeling. Woke up on the beach a few times with no recollection of how I got there. Best vacation ever. Thanks, Navy. Story 9. A couple of years ago at work, I was browsing Dick Smith's website and I noticed they had a sale that reduced the price of all items below $50 by $10. I thought to myself, I wonder if I can try to purchase something for less than $10 and get it for free. Lo and behold, it works. So me and 2 coworkers ended up ordering about 15 miscellaneous items between us, 3.5mm extension cables, torch, phone chargers, stuff like that, before Dick Smith seemingly cottoned on. Not a huge exploit by any means, but we had a good chuckle to ourselves when a few days later, there were 15 small individual packages waiting for us at the reception area in our office. Edit. Apparently, a bunch of people have not heard of the term cottoned on before. It means to figure out, to understand, or to catch on. Story 10. The online community that played Diablo 2 created its own form of currency by trading valuable in-game items for rare rings called SOJs. Stones of Jordan. For instance, if you wanted that rare plus attack power armor, you would buy it for 12 SOJs. Anyway, I figured out that there's a discrepancy between the worth of an SOJ in-game and its actual monetary worth on eBay. Same with magic items, but in reverse. I would buy SOJs on eBay for cheap, go in-game, and trade them for rare magic items. Then I would sell those magic items on eBay for way more than I paid for the SOJs. I made enough money to pay for college books and other living expenses. Blizzard tried to capitalize on this when they released Diablo 3, but they failed miserably by regulating the market too much. The system worked in D2 because it was only regulated by the supply and demand of the users. Story 11. So I wanted to get cheap coffee filters online as I knew I was going to need them for the foreseeable future and wanted to get a better price on them. So I found a site that had them at half price, $1.95 for 100 filters, and usually $3.99 at the store. What I was paying at the store and put them in my cart. When I went to check out, it asked me if I wanted to set up an automatic delivery to have them shipped every 2 weeks, and they would reduce the price. I said sure, why not? After all, they were the cheapest I had found, and getting them every week would mean I didn't have to keep ordering them. So it brought the price down to like $1 for 100 filters. I was thrilled. Then it asked me if I wanted to join the Coffee Savers program for more discounts. I said sure. So after joining the Savers program, it brought the price down to $0.00. I was stunned. I still had to add my credit card, but I was never charged. So for 2 years, I got 100 filters delivered to my door for free. Never got charged, not once. One day though, I got a notice that said they were going out of business and my free filters would end. It was sad. But the stockpile I amassed then lasted me about 2 years, and recently in the past 2 weeks, I had to buy new filters. Life will never be the same. Story 12. Copied and pasted from the last time. Back in the day, 2007 to 2008, I found a major flaw in the POS at Blockbuster. Their system would update overnight, but only certain parts, and these parts were on different days of the week. Their new item prices would update on Thursday. Their used prices would update on Friday, but their trade-in values would update after closing on Sunday. This meant if a game dropped in MSRP, its new version would first lower on Thursday morning, $49.99 to $19.99 and be cheaper than the used version. The next day, on Friday morning, its used version would be lowered, $47.99 to $17.99. The trade-in value would still be the same, usually $30 to $35, even though you could pull the game off the rack, buy it for $20, then trade in back without leaving the line. I did this a few times and felt bad, so I emailed corporate to let them know about the loophole. They told me they didn't take in information/suggestions from outside parties, essentially because they had that set up as part of their business strategy. I then proceeded to help them in their endeavors by buying 20 plus copies of Beowulf from Best Buy for $9.99, $19.99 with a $10 coupon, and trading them in for about $800 in store credit. Then I repurchased all 25 copies with the store credit for about $500. Then I traded them in again. Then I bought them again. I did this a few times over the weekend and ended up with $1,200 in store credit from $250 cash. Then I found a few games GameStop gave good money for and traded them in over there for store credit. I made some pre-order and eventually canceled them and requested cash back for the deposit. I eventually got a letter from Blockbuster banning me from trading, but it had the wrong date, post-dated for the next year, and I kept trading. I don't feel bad about it. Story 13. This was more grinding than exploitation, but it was fun. The grocery store where I lived had a fuel card you could sign up for. If you bought certain items, you would get 1 cent or 2 cents off per gallon, sometimes more depending on the item or week. One week, they run a promotion that every one of their store generics would get 2 cents off per gallon per item. I walk by the powdered Kool-Aid packets and notice they sell a generic version of that, 10 for $1. I do the math. My vehicle has a 16.5 gallon tank. Gas costs $3.14 per gallon. Each packet of drink mix costs 10 cents. Every packet of drink mix I buy will save me 33 cents at the pump. I will need 157 packets of drink mix to get free gas. This will save me $36.11. I should do this. So I count out 157 little individual packets of drink mix, all kinds of flavors, and I go to the checkout. I try to save the guy some time by telling him how many there are in each flavor, but the manager had walked by and stopped to see what was going on with the generic Kool-Aid. So the poor guy has to scan every single one. The manager makes an awkward joke about the amount of drink mix I'm buying, but when I pull out my fuel card, my ploy becomes clear. The cashier reads off my new fuel discount and I'm on my way to the gas station, where I proudly fuel up my vehicle. I still had to pay 16 cents. They wouldn't let you reduce the price all the way to zero. Then I took all the generic drink mix and donated it to the local food pantry because I hate Kool-Aid. Story 14. Finally, I get to share this epic story. If Microsoft is reading, this is a fictional story. Don't sue me, scrubs. I discovered an exploit in the Windows Microsoft support site in which I essentially could create my own support tickets as if I was a MS employee. Basically, I found this obscure page on the Microsoft.support site that's comically hard to find. I had a direct link saved back then. This page would display all of your open support tickets for personal viewing. So let's say you called Xbox support about your game acting up. You know those service requests, SR numbers they would give you? Each of those would display with brief case details and action taken. What I found out was, apparently, there's an old outdated feature that they plan to make public in which you could reply to the support request ticket, perhaps with more questions, etc. The functionality was there, but I doubt it was ever used. Anyways, I tried it once. I typed a reply and there it went. The closed support ticket went from closed to open, and when I called about the issue, they said they could see the response with my name attached. This is where I got really mischievous. I had the brilliant idea to change my name on my Microsoft account to first name, Microsoft Escalation, last name, Department. Now, every time I submitted a reply to a service request, to the agent who looked at the SR next when referenced, it would display a message from Microsoft Escalation Department. So then I basically had free reign over everything since support representatives thought I, or rather the Escalation Department, had authority. So essentially, they would respect the request in the ticket. Naturally, being the greedy teenage boy that I was, I exploited this trick to get tons of Xbox Live Gold time and then sell the codes for tons of profit. So here was the process. 1. Call Xbox support and say some bullcrap about how I had gold applied to my account, but it's not showing up. Say you have to go and that you want a support ticket so you can reference it when you call back later. 2. Go on the support site, find the SR number, and type reply as Microsoft Escalation Department, stating something along the lines of, quote, Customer purchased, in total, 10 months of Xbox Live Gold membership. 10 months was the most profitable because I would get 3 3-month memberships and 1 1-month membership code. He reported that the gold was not applied to his account, and we verified that the purchases were made. Due to a system bug at the time of the call with the customer, we were unable to produce the token request for the customer. Then I would add a section for customer service agent. Please provide customer with 10 months of Xbox Live service via token. It was all written much better than that, and I had a professional pre-typed version ready to paste at the ready. 3. Call the agent and give them the SR number, informing them, quote, "They said something about providing me with a token for the membership. I don't know, they said they added notes on the SR number. I say that they were unable to do it because of a system crash or whatever, and then the agent would dutifully perform the task. I mean, who wouldn't obey their superior?" And 4. Final step. Take the codes, sell them on eBay for retail price, or close to it, make a new Xbox account, and start it all over. It was good business until Microsoft made actual changes to their website because of me. In fact, as a temporary fix, Microsoft actually added an amendum to each new reply via the support page that said in big bold letters, "This support reply was created by the customer in the blah 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 portal." Hilariously, that wasn't nearly enough to stop me. All I did was add a short paragraph under that bold text with what looks like a customer request. Then I just hit enter a few times to go to a few lines down and just typed a new chapter, so to speak, in all caps. The following is the Microsoft Escalation Department's reply. Then I just did the same thing. Support agents were a little confused now, but the end result was the same. Finally, they changed it completely to where the page was vastly different, and even though you could still make replies, the customer service reps couldn't see anything you posted. So anyways, that's my story of how I exploited Microsoft's support system, became the head of the escalation department, and got a crap ton of money in live membership, and served as an instrument in changing the infrastructure of Microsoft's online support. Story 15. This past semester, I needed to take a biology class with a lab to graduate. I was told that it was one of the easiest classes at my school to take, but as a lit type, I didn't agree much. It was so much information all at once, and I found it really boring, so I didn't do so well on the tests or assignments. I got C's and D's, even on the final, which I stayed up all night to study for. We also had a class blog. There were about 120 of us, and we each had to write 3 posts per semester on anything biology related. I didn't do well in the lab section either. I failed the multiple choice test and the practical, and I assumed I was effed. However, the professor said that if we made comments on our peers' blog posts and turned in worksheets to show what edits we made, when, and on what topic, we could get 5 extra points per edit. Most kids did 2 or 3. I did 97. Got an A for the semester. Yeah, this is definitely exploitation, but also like absolutely horrible teaching practice. Why would you allow somebody to do this? Like completely bomb all of the exams and the tests and stuff, but literally make all that up in extra credit and get an A. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, not shaming OP for jumping through the loophole and exploiting, but yeah, that teacher needs to redo their scoring system. That's terrible. Story 16. A number of years ago, Discover would run some extra high cashback promotions at certain retailers. One of them was Barnes & Noble, and they'd go as high as 10% cash back. At the same time, Discover would allow you to buy gift cards at a discount using your cashback balance, and they sold B&M gift cards at 10% off. The loophole was that Discover would credit you cashback on a purchase if you had your Discover card as your primary payment instrument on your B&M account, even if you didn't actually use it to make the purchase. Starting with cash back I had already earned from other purchases, I bought gift cards, went to B&M online, bought Nook ebooks with the gift cards, and got cash back as if I had used my credit card. Every month for a couple years, Barnes & Noble and Discover were basically paying me to buy ebooks. They stopped those promotions, so now I just use my cash back to buy stuff at Amazon. I did have a Nook Simple Touch at the time, but even if I didn't, it was still worth it. Because Nook books are EPUBs, and they have trivial DRM that's easily cracked. Thus, even if I were a Kindle or a Kobo or other user, I could still buy those Nook books, crack them, convert them as needed, and read on my chosen device. Story 17. I made a respectable income last year from a loophole in Amazon's payment system. Somehow, I discovered that if you use a prepaid debit card with little or no money on it, they would still let the order go through. But then, it would later make you revise the payment method. Since it would give you 3 to 4 days to change the payment, you could retry or charge the BS card up to 3 times to add even more time. I would find items on crazy sales, like 50% plus off, and essentially lock in the price. Once the price went back to normal, I would list it for slightly below whatever the lowest price was, in the hope that someone would buy it. Once someone would buy said product, I would change the payment method to my actual credit card and put in their shipping information. This maybe took me 1 to 2 hours a day to find deals, keep track of inventory, and ship orders. My main sources for deals were Camel, Slick Deals, and Amazon Daily Deals. The beauty of this was that there was absolutely no risk. If an item didn't sell for a few days, or the price didn't go back up, Amazon would just eventually cancel my order. If it sold after Amazon canceled my order, I would just contact customer support to match the price. If a customer wanted to return, I would just tell Amazon the item was defective and give the customer my free return label. Hell, even for orders under $35, in which I would use a Prime account for free shipping, I would get a refund on my prorated Prime account since it would get revoked in about 3 to 4 months since I was shipping to too many different addresses. Unfortunately, Amazon eventually caught on to me having too many canceled orders and banned my buying privileges. The loophole also doesn't work anymore, as Amazon will now just cancel orders that don't go through. This lasted for about 1 year, and I made about $40K doing this. Story 18. In geography class for 4th grade, our class was split into groups of 4 and given a book full of sheets of questions. Example questions would be like, what's the largest mountain chain in South America? Or how many continents border the Mediterranean Sea? Each sheet was supposed to be done at home individually, and then on Friday, you were supposed to go meet with your group and then share the answers. Then, the teacher would go over the answers and keep score for all of the teams. 8 to 10 questions per sheet, 10 points per correct answer. Every 6 weeks, we would do a competition to earn more points. It was Jeopardy style, where the teacher would read a question and you had to press a button first to be able to answer. She had a special toy that she used. At the end of the competition, you could wager the points like you do in Final Jeopardy. The teacher seemed to try to divide the class into fair groups. Each group had equally smart kids and not so bright kids. However, I felt like my team was definitely the reject team. I had one girl who always brought in completely wrong answers on her sheets. One kid wouldn't even do his sheets, and the last girl tried her best, but wasn't quite up to par. One team had 2 students that were very bright. They were honor students all the way through high school. So after the third 6-week Jeopardy competition, we were in last place by a fairly substantial margin. The dream team was in first, of course. However, I was the last one on my team chosen to do the 6-week Jeopardy competition, and that was what allowed me to find the loophole in the competition. The questions that the teacher would use for the Jeopardy competition were from the questions in the previous 6 weeks, but the final Jeopardy question was always one random question from the sheet exactly 4 weeks ahead in the sheets we used. So the first Jeopardy competition questions were from weeks 1 through 6, but the final question, where you can wager all of your points, was one question from week 10. So all year long, I have to answer all the questions on our sheets since none of my teammates were capable. I had to sit there and watch my teammates go into the Jeopardy competition and come out in last place. And to top it off, the teacher kept this huge shiny scoreboard created with colored construction paper updated each week, and it was hung by the front door of the classroom so you could see it on the way out. So going into the final Jeopardy competition, I went ahead in the sheets and studied all the questions on the sheet 4 weeks ahead of the current week. By the time we got to the final wager, I had built up a decent sum of points to wager. And to add to that, the teacher let us wager all the points we had accumulated the entire year in the final question of the final Jeopardy. I remember the entire class being shocked because this was a brand new rule she threw in at the last second. So, of course, I wagered all of my team's points from the entire year to try and double up. I remember we had something like 1,700 points, whereas the top team was like 4,000 to 5,000. So the teacher reads the final Jeopardy question and my eyes lit up. I had figured out the loophole and was about to cash in big time. I was the only team representative to answer the question right. It was a question about how many continents bordered the Mediterranean Sea question. However, it was only enough to propel us into second place because the top team did not wager many points. Or they were so far ahead, I can't remember which one it was. I'll still never forget the smile on my teacher's face when she saw my answer to the final wager with all my team's points on the line. Story 19. Too bad this will be buried. Maybe I'll do a LPT on it. I used to travel for work. I lived in Greensboro, North Carolina, and worked in Boston. I'd book the same flights every week, out early Monday morning and back on the 5:30 p.m. flight on Friday night. But thing is, I knew ahead of time that my return flight would be overbooked. In fact, it was usually so overbooked that they needed as many as 6 or 7 seats. And so they offered money/mile/flights as needed. Every Friday, I'd wait for them to make the first announcement, usually a voucher. Then the second announcement, probably a slightly larger voucher. Double. But the third announcement? That's when they started offering the good stuff. I'd take that one, usually at least a round trip anywhere in the continental US. Sometimes they offered a flight and a voucher, and once or twice, they even offered a free trip anywhere in the world. Sweet! And then they'd book me a guaranteed seat on the next flight, which was never overbooked anyway. The best part was that got on the same connecting flight as I would have been on the 5:30 flight out of Boston. I didn't do it that way to scam them. It was the only connection available for either flight. I took that route 45 to 50 weeks a year for 2 whole years. I lost count of how many vouchers and free round-trip tickets I accumulated. I even got calls from the frequent flyer miles rep telling me I was, quote, abusing the system, and that if I persisted, I would have my miles taken away. I figured, what the heck? I earned maybe 2 free trips a year with miles. That was peanuts compared to what I got by simply taking advantage of their weekly kindness. They never did take away my miles. It all ended about a month before my Boston job was over. One Friday, the gate agent announced that anyone who wanted a free round-trip ticket in return for them giving up their seat should see her at the podium. And then she followed it up with, "But not you, Mr. Tillerman 35. Story 20. Back in my days, the internet wasn't invented yet. Using Google to check for plagiarism didn't exist. The times were much simpler, and penny candy still cost a penny. In high school, I had an English teacher who apparently lost his desire to teach. He apathetically sat at his desk all semester long while we silently read books. There wasn't a book list. Any book was a qualifiable contender to a potentially great grade. All we had to do was write a book report to prove we read the book. The more book reports we wrote, the better our grade. I wasn't an avid reader, so I started writing imaginary book reports to books that didn't exist. My first book was called The Log Cabin by J.C. Freeling, a 19th century true life adventure of a mountain man named Ben Buchanan. He lost everything: wealth, family, and the desire to live. It wasn't until he moved to the wilderness that his life started changing for the better. He built a log cabin and became aware of who he really was and what he was about to become. My teacher liked my writing and gave me a B. He later praised me on the amount of books I read and how I was the top reader in his class. I even noticed he took a stronger interest in his students. Perhaps I was his log cabin. So I, regrettably, also did this as well when I was young. Again, before the internet and all of that. So I actually took the storyline for Final Fantasy VII, which came out in 1997, I believe. And I basically would write like these book reports. I would change the names of the characters around, but basically like word for word, write a synopsis of the Final Fantasy VII storyline. And my teacher absolutely loved it. And I aced every single book report that I did. So yeah, this was definitely a thing back in the day. You know, instead of Cloud, we had Claude. Instead of Tifa, we had Tiffany. You get the idea. It was great. Story 21. Washington State high schools have a program called Running Start. It allows juniors and seniors to attend community college classes for both high school and college credit. I was not enjoying my high school experience. I already knew the material as Colorado schools I came from were ahead of the Washington State curriculum, and there were a lot of disruptive students that led to half of the teacher's time being dedicated to discipline. I was rapidly losing interest and my grades started to show it. Having just finished the WASL with great scores, I was called into the guidance office and offered a summer job as a tutor for my peers. I told him how much I hated the classroom environment, and he dusted off a few books and I started the Running Start program. The only class I attended at high school was a homeroom. Then I'd walk to the bus, grab a coffee, and spend the rest of my day at a community college that was right next to my house. Some classes had only a semi-final and a final, so I could freely skip them and sleep or play video games at home. Another class, the teacher had quit and it became an online course. I did very well, and by the next year, I didn't even have to show up to the high school. By the time I graduated, I got an associate's degree as well. The loophole aspect is that the school hadn't used the program in many years, and the guidance counselor had no idea what he was doing, as I was supposed to be limited on the amount of classes I could take in substitution for high school classes. I got away with a logic course being counted as statistics, a forensic anthropology class as lab science, and took a full college load when I should have only been allowed 2 classes. Also, my day should have started and ended at the high school. Story 22. Free prize gift cards for a sports store amounted to over a few $100s. Freshman year of college, my 2 friends and I decided to go to a football game because it was free and nothing else to do. We go to the student section, which was empty, and there's some guy handing out sports store gift cards that are between $5 to $200. The guy is bored out of his mind since there's no one there, and we're talking to him for a little while, and he gives us about 5 cards each. Pretty sweet deal. But then, before the game starts, it's still empty stadium, and he has all these cards and gives us a flat card that's about 3/4 full. We took a few stacks each of it and left the rest on seats around us. We were pretty stoked and realized we had too many cards to check all the balances, so we each grabbed a few to see if we could use multiple in store. So that weekend, we went into the sports store, but the store told us only one can be used per transaction, so all we bought was a few ping pong balls. Then light bulb went off. We thought we would give online a shot. Little did we realize the amount of cards we had, if only $5 apiece, would add up to a decent amount of money. We started by each of us adding one thing we wanted into the cart. After we all put one thing in, we would add the prize gift cards to see where we were at. We all ended up with about 4 to 9 items each, and were able to get hats, jerseys, clothes, shoes, anything at the store. We got quite a few $20 cards and a handful of $50 and up as well, so we all got a ton of free stuff regularly. Story 23. My buddy and I were playing one of those ball-dropping machines, quite similar to Japanese pachinko games, in a theme park that gave out tickets which are redeemable for prizes like huge teddy bears, stationery, souvenirs, cheap gadgets, and stuff like that. After about 5 minutes of playing, we hit the jackpot bonus. The machine started going crazy and spat out tickets as if it were having some sort of ticket diarrhea. We tried collecting as much as we could, and it just kept giving out tickets, so we started giving them away to kids who were nearby. This went on for close to an hour, and we were like Santa Clauses, making it rain tickets on many very happy children. Parents, and even a few young couples who wanted those big teddies. By the time the machine ran out of tickets, we had almost emptied out the prize booth, and the park attendants didn't seem to mind at all, seeing how happy all those kids were. It was a really awesome day, and some of the parents came to thank us for making their kids happy, all misty-eyed. At the end, we didn't even get to claim a single prize for ourselves that day. But hell, it was worth it seeing all those smiles and laughs. The best part was that the park crew seemed like they knew what was going on, but they didn't care enough to stop it, even though we saw them getting chewed out by their manager for not stopping the machine earlier. We had a chat with one of them later that day, and she said she knew the machine was broken, and it shouldn't have been operating, but they hate that the management tweaks the machines to make winning really hard, and this was the park crew's way of getting back at them. So every so often, they would stuff that machine full of tickets and just let it run. Story 24. A local small-town radio station ran a Christmas contest where they would play a Christmas song backwards. They would usually pick some modern version of a classic song to make it tougher to identify. A few coworkers and I listened to the radio all day and were familiar with the contest. The first couple songs were so hard that they had to replay them hourly throughout the day, sometimes not getting a winning caller until the evening. These were the days of Windows 95, which came with a simple sound recorder program. The program could record from the mic and had all of about one feature: reverse playback. We taped a PC microphone to a clock radio. We had one person responsible to record, reverse, and identify the song. He would email the rest of us. In advance, we would identify a daily winner who would call in and win. The contest ran for 2 weeks. To avoid being caught, we would skip the days when the prizes were less enticing. 4 of us each took home 2 great prizes. I won a Back to the Future DVD box set and a $100 gift card to the local skate shop. I used my girlfriend's name when I won the second time and had to claim her prize. Story 25. A few years back, when Activision decided to pull the plug on Guitar Hero, Toys R Us decided to sell all their copies of the game for $10. The guitar/drum set was going for $30. I saw the article online and had hit up every single store in my area. They were sold out since that afternoon. I sat there, defeated. I'd always wanted the entire set, and I had owned previous copies, but I never wanted to dish out the cash for the entire kit. Then it dawned on me. An idea so far-fetched, it was genius. I decided to go for a Hail Mary. Best Buy has a price-matching policy. I didn't even think about it. I shot out towards the nearest store. I walked in and saw all the games and kits were still full price. Come on, it's effing Best Buy. No way they were going to lose out on profit. I walked into the game section and asked one of the reps about the price matching guarantee. The guy looked at me like I was bonkers. I had printed an ad for the sale. I took all the games and a full band kit to the register and asked to see the manager. This tall, douchey-looking white guy came up to me with a crap-eating grin. He told me that the ad was probably fake and that he was not going to honor their policy. I didn't even think about it. I just said, F it, call him. He picked up his phone, and with a look that said, the balls on this guy, he got in touch with a local store. He asked about the promotion. He went effing pale. Immediately, there was a look of fury in his gaze. The manager then turned around and could barely mutter the words to the cashier. Honor the discount. She just stood there, thinking he was joking. The manager said, do it, and just proceeded to walk away. Even his stride told a story of his anger. The cashier gave me the discount and, in a cocky tone, told me it was still going to be around $50. I smiled and took out a rewards coupon. $50. They still have to give the items a price, so I could use the coupon. Cents. I paid cents for everything. I went home a proud man. I beat the system. A few days later, I met a guy that worked at one of the Best Buy stores. I told him my story. He started to laugh. It turns out Best Buy sent out a memo to not honor the price matching guarantee unless the competitor had the items in stock. The idiot manager didn't bother to ask that simple question. Suck it, baby. Story 26. I'm an Uber driver. Throwaway. Last year, Uber cut their rates and it hurt really bad. What was once a decent job became one where I was making below minimum wage if I were lucky. I wanted revenge, so I used a little hack to collect money from them. There was no way to request yourself as a driver without getting caught, but it was easy to use another phone with another profile to request yourself. Since Uber had so many drivers and so few employees to monitor shenanigans, I figured I would fly under the radar. So I created a fake passenger account and would request myself to meet their hourly fare guarantees. Uber usually runs these guarantees after price cuts to get drivers used to driving for less money. Since the app saw that I was logged in for the hours, I would get paid Uber's guarantees while I went out and did Lyft rides because F Uber. At the end of it, I ripped off Uber for about $6,000 and quit. I can tell people that Uber literally pushed me to go drive for Lyft. It felt so good to get my revenge from a company that had done everything in its power to completely ruin the lives of its drivers. Every driver I knew was suffering after the cuts. Fast forward 1 year, and they cut their rates once again. I don't know how they survive. Please tip your driver. They can't admit that they're suffering because it leads to low ratings. I assure you they are. Story 27. I was an infantryman during the run-up to Operation Iraqi Liberation. Yes, this was before Command realized that calling your operation oil wasn't good PR. I had gotten very sick, and my first sergeant sent me upstairs to act as our company's training NCO. For civilians, the training NCO in a unit is the person in charge of handling all the paperwork that the CO and first sergeant don't want to do. Basically, I filled out the boxes on the forms and they signed them. We knew that we were going to be in Iraq months before any civilians, so we had a couple guys go AWOL in mid-2002. They came back after a week or so, then left again, and so on. Our CO was furious about it, but he had to follow the UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, when it came to their punishments. Getting them into lockdown would take a few months, and they would still be on our roster taking up a slot where a real soldier could go. We even had a calendar to track a crap bag's 30 days. At 30 days of AWOL, a person can be labeled a deserter and dropped from your roster. You can even send the request for more personnel that same day. Then came a day in late 2002, when we had begun the initial prep for deployment. Command, of course, couldn't call it that officially, but no one in our battalion had any doubt where we would be this time next year. Our AWOL problem got worse. And then it happened. I was reading my copy of the UCMJ to try and find anything. It was one of the most exciting moments of my life. The section on AWOL and desertion had a small footnote that I passed over who knows how many times. If a soldier's commanding officer has a reasonable belief that the soldier has gone AWOL for the purpose of avoiding hazardous duty, the soldier may be labeled a deserter 24 hours after the first missed formation. I jumped up and ran out of my office, which is something a soldier should never do. I walked into my CO's office. Another very, very bad thing, even if your job is to deliver paperwork to his desk. Sir, we're getting ready to go to Iraq. This better be good. Or AWOL, sir. Do you believe they might be going AWOL to get out of going to Iraq and performing the hazardous duty in theater? I suppose. What does that have to do with anything? I showed him the footnote. He actually smiled, which was amazing because he smiled less than first sergeant. All in all, I'm directly responsible for 4 dishonorable discharges and 1 all-expense-paid trip to Fort Leavenworth due to finding that one footnote and abusing it on AWOL jackasses. The information was disseminated for the rest of the battalion, and AWOLs nearly stopped. Story 28. We'll probably get buried because I'm so late to the party, but I finally have something to contribute to an Ask Reddit and am posting out of excitement. When the Beats by Dre came out, I bought my first pair at Best Buy. When I was checking out for the first time, they asked if I wanted insurance for them for 10% more. I said sure and left with the headphones. Well, good thing I bought the insurance because these pieces of crap literally broke in the first 2 months of regular use. I paid like $300 for some crappy plastic headphones and the side snapped when I was putting on my head. I bring them in with the receipt, show them what broke, and then they literally hand me a new, unopened box. I figured out how easy this was, so then, every couple months or so, I would purposely break them and go grab the new color that came out because it was the same price. I probably went through 15 pairs of Beats and all the new colors, but then, unfortunately, I turned 17 and realized how gay and crappy these headphones were. So I went in and asked for a credit instead of a new pair. And the lady behind the customer service desk literally pays me $300 in cash, and I walk out with the cash I started with about 3 years ago. TLDR, bought insurance for the Beats by Dre headphones at Best Buy, used insurance to get 15 new pairs, then returned for all my money back 3 years later. Story 29. My buddy found an epic loophole. He flew back home to visit family for vacation for 2 weeks. He accidentally parks in the hourly parking at the airport instead of the long-term parking, so he claims. He returns from vacation and attempts to pay for his parking, and they tell him his will be something like $700 for parking and won't let him leave without paying it. So he calls his girlfriend and has her drive to the airport and park in the hourly parking lot. She gives him her ticket, and then he gives her cash and tells her to tell the teller that she lost her ticket. Lost ticket rate was a flat rate, which was expensive if you were only there for an hour or two, but it was incredibly cheaper than parking in the long-term parking for 2 weeks. So his girlfriend pays something like $30 or $40 for a lost ticket, and he gets free parking since the ticket he got from his girlfriend said he was at the airport less than 30 minutes. Story 30. Not me, but my dad has basically lived his life finding loopholes. My dad never became famous or successful to any huge degree, but he was very good with math. He's told me a few stories that make me think he was some kind of Ferris Bueller or 21 in his heyday. At some point, he was at a casino and figured out an algorithm to always win a certain game. This was back in the 70s, so things weren't super encrypted, but he made a bit of money. He always said, quote, "A gambler would have kept doing that till he got in trouble. I didn't. I left when I had double what I walked in with." Another time, I'm not entirely sure how he did it, but this was back in the 70s too. He failed every math test and somehow accidentally got an A for the course. This may have been some of those first-gen computers back in the day, IDK. I found an old Atari 400 or 800 in the attic though. I don't know much about the man's history. I know he got conscripted to Vietnam the month they changed the lottery system, and somehow got out of it. He was going to go for a naval position on an aircraft carrier. Somehow found a loophole there too, I guess. I think my dad's character is best found when back in the 90s. We were semi-poor and dumpster dive for most of our furniture and stuff. We found an old Mac, still functional. We got it working and, to our surprise, found the previous owner's entire credit card history. He said, "Son, we repossess. We don't steal." And he proceeded to wipe the hard drive clean. He always found a loophole, as long as he didn't steal. Story 31. This wasn't my loophole, but my grandfather's. He turned 18 in 1944 and was called in by the draft office shortly thereafter. He got his papers to report to the Army on X date. So he quit his job, put all of his things in storage, and reported as specified. Once he checked in, they gave him a roll of all the other draftees. The CO told him to read off all the names, check everyone in, and then have them all swear in unison. Then he was to have them load up onto the train and head on their way. After they all left on the train, my grandfather checked back in with the CO. The CO was surprised to see my grandfather there. When asked, my grandfather said he did exactly what he was told. He swore everyone in and loaded them on the train. The CO asked him if he took the oath as well. My grandfather said no, because he wasn't instructed to do so. My grandfather asked the CO what to do next. The CO decided that since my grandfather hadn't taken the oath, he was not a member of the Army, and since he hadn't made the train, it would be more of a hassle to get him to basic training. So the CO thanked my grandfather for his service, gave him a paper saying he had met his draft requirements, and sent him home. My grandfather went back home, got his old job back, and met my grandmother a couple of months later. Story 32. I used to work at a very popular convenience store chain here in the Midwest. This was over 20 years ago, and I used to smoke. Marlboro Miles. We would stock the single cigarettes with cartons, but when the mile program was out, our manager would have us use the 3-pack container that had like double miles on it to stock the singles. I would then take the container home and cash in the miles. I got 2 watches, pretty nice ones too, Swiss Army, a huge lumberjack pullover, which I still use to this day, a really nice sleeping bag/blanket, and various trinkets. Marlboro cigarettes too. Marlboro had this promotion to buy 3 packs and get 2 free. We had hundreds left over after the promotion was over. The 2 free packs had not for resale on them. I was allowed to stock the 3 as singles and take home the 2 free ones. Took home 5 or 6 cartons of Marlboro 100s. I had to share with coworkers. Finally, Marlboro 3. Double bonus. When the Saturday newspaper came out, it was called the 2-star edition. Then the Sunday paper would come out, and they called it the 3-star edition. We always had 2-star editions left over, and if I knew there were cigarette coupons in there, I would clean out all of the 2 stars. Coupons counted as cash in our drawers. I could buy Marlboros with any coupon, same as cash, and if the Marlboros had manufacturer coupons on the carton, we could stack. I quit smoking November 27th, 2007. Story 33. My time to shine. Maybe nobody will read this, but it's definitely worth a loophole. So my senior year, I had to go to what would basically be considered a prison school. Closed access, 8 to 10 students per teacher, random K-9 checks, and a uniform guard at all times. As a post-secondary enrolled senior who was into anime and building computers, I was basically overlooked. So most of the coursework for the classes there happened on some new program that had just been released the prior year. It had all of the courses in both text and video format, homework assignments, and scheduled testing. So the first trimester, I did my best to get good grades. Not easy for a senior and a mob of juniors and sophomores, but despite my efforts, I managed to only take 1 or 2 tests in economy and maybe 1 homework assignment. It's not that I didn't understand the coursework, it was just such a poorly prepared course that I wanted nothing to do with it. So needless to say, coming grinding time, no mid-try reporting either, I was nervous as could be, for I had almost certainly flunked that class, until I got my report card and saw it was my highest grade. And this, Reddit, is where I discovered the student's wet dream. You see, most classes are graded on points earned versus cumulative points in curriculum. However, for whatever strange programming error, every course, as I determined, was graded on points earned versus points attempted. What this meant is that no matter how many assignments, essays, or tests there were for a course, my grade would only be based on the average percentage of what I had turned in. Meaning I could study, prepare for, and ace 1 test in each class, and come out with all A's for that semester. So I exploited the crap out of it and spent my last 2 trimesters senior year using the laptops they gave us to browse new egg and design fantasy computer builds. Even convinced my parents to buy me a fantasy build if I got all A's my senior year. Looking back, I feel a little bit guilty, also somewhat less learned than my peers, and I ended up paying my parents back for my PC last year by buying each of them a laptop, but it was awesome as hell. Story 34. We have this thing called air miles in Canada. I guess if I had to describe it, it's a kind of customer loyalty program, but it covers a large group of businesses all at once. If you get your gas here instead of there, you can score a few air miles. They're used as a currency to reduce the cost of flights, sometimes down to nearly nothing. As far as I can recall, you still have to pay taxes or airport fees, something like that. Well, I used to be on a very expensive drug for a health related problem. The kind of thing where to keep me healthy and in recovery, I had to take one shot a week, and each shot cost about 850 to 900 Canadian dollars. Of course, this is all covered by a special government exemption, so after a relatively small deductible at the beginning of the year, I didn't have to pay anything. But I shopped at a pharmacy from a big grocery chain that happened to be part of the Air Miles program. For over a year, I think maybe 2, I was earning air miles at a rate that's unheard of. I was flying 3 to 4 times a year across the country to visit friends and family and paying next to nothing for the privilege. I got other things out of the loyalty program too. Countertop kitchen appliances, household items, gift card vouchers, everything wasn't good. The reason I was taking the medicine was still the biggest part of my life at that point, but the air miles situation took some of the edge off. Story 35. I used to work at a very well-known American all-you-can-eat buffet years ago. As it was opening a brand new build in our town, a bunch of my friends and I were hired simultaneously. It was an okay job, making okay money, but one day a manager friend realized that nothing printed on the double registry tape that kept records when it was rung up in training mode. It only spit out a customer receipt instead of making another copy to the journal roll for the revenue reports. We would run 2 registers at a time and take cash only in one and whatever in the other. It went on for months and no one ever caught on. The place ended up closing down, and it was a wonder it stayed open as long as it did. I personally never directly took a slice out of the pie, but a lot of other people did. Edit. I suppose I did, if I count the free lunches I ate instead of paying half price like I was supposed to. The craziest part? One night, one of the dumber managers I was friends with separated the haul from the drop, left it banded in the safe, forgetting to take with him after he locked up, and had to go back about an hour later. He took too long resettling the alarm and the police came, so he said he left his wallet in there, and after a quick call to upper management, he was free to go with about $900 in his pocket. Story 36. I have a good one. I worked for a state park for a couple years. People would come to picnic, hike, swim, camp, and whatever else, and I would sell them a day pass. 1 day parking/usage pass cost $10, was used for both campers and day users. They came in perforated books that were numbered so they could compare how much cash they had and the till versus how many passes were sold, to make sure it added up. The thing was, I was the one who wrote the dates on them, so that patrons couldn't just keep the pass and use it indefinitely. Well, a lot of times people would be done for the day or campers checking out, and would stop by my building on their way out to give back the pass instead of throwing it out on their own. So I saved these passes and resold them by rewriting the date on them. I became very proficient at writing ambiguous numbers that could be easily rewritten, and then just pocketed the money. There was no till errors because the money in the pass weren't accounted for in any way. I made a lot of money this way, usually about an extra $100 to $150 per day. I would also sell senior annual passes, $20, to non-senior people. Normal annual passes cost $45 or $50, and would pocket the difference. It was another impossible to identify thing because we didn't exactly track who bought the passes, and it wasn't like you would get arrested by the cops for having the wrong state park pass. By the end of my time working there, I was pulling down a lot of extra cash. Story 37. In college, the bookstore had a promotion where they put a scratch-off ticket in everyone's student mailbox where you could win free textbooks, or a certain percentage off, if you took it in with you when you bought your books and scratched off a winning box. There were 3 boxes and you could only scratch off 1. Well, as you can tell, this was a crappy promotion since you only had a 1 in 3 chance of hitting a discount, and the odds of discount actually being on the card were obviously poor to start with. Now, in theory, there was no way of knowing if your card was a winner without scratching the card, and I sure as hell wasn't about to pay an extra $500 to buy my books at the college bookstore on the minuscule chance that they might be free. This train of thought seemed to be very prevalent throughout the whole student body, however, and the vast majority of students were throwing their scratch-off ticket away before they even left the mailroom. Well, by a happy coincidence, I discovered that if you held an unscratch-off ticket up to a very bright light that you could decipher the prices beneath. So I rounded up all of the discarded scratch-off tickets, over 100 of them, in the trash can and began examining each card looking for the winning cards. Well, lo and behold, after checking each card, I had found absolutely 0 winning cards of any kind, excluding a free t-shirt or 2, and promptly tore the cards up, cussed the greedy university I was attending, and hurried off to the class I was now late for. Story 38. Many years ago, when AOL was on the way out after cable internet came around, they were pushing for free trials and stuff pretty hard. This is during the time when they had the notorious sales teams that wouldn't cancel your account, which they later got in legal trouble for. Walking through Best Buy one day, some friends and I decide to hit on the hot chick working the register. As we check out, we notice it's not really a register, but more of a promotion/trap to get customers to sign up for AOL. As we're paying for some random CDs and such, she asks, "And did you want the $20 cash off for signing up with AOL today?" Choices had to be made. We told the girl about some parties we were going to and agreed to meet up later, and in the process, she explained how this whole thing worked. Basically, she got paid to sign people up for AOL, and they would just go home and cancel it, assuming they could force the support staff to cancel it. After figuring it out, we signed all of us up for AOL. Mind you, all of us had just got cable modems and quit dial-up within the last few years. When we got home, we all canceled the trial. Holy crap, that was hard. The people on the phone, one named Dustin. Dustin was a trooper. He was an AOL trial god. He was so good, I almost wanted to buy more AOL each time I called in to cancel. He would answer everything with a question or a way to find out how you could get AOL and improve your life with it. Upon my first defeat against Dustin, I asked him for his rep code or number, at which point he told me, quote, "Anytime someone wants to write a number next to my name, I say write number 1. It was at this point that I realized we had $60 riding on canceling AOL correctly and making it past Dustin or finding a way to skip him. My friend skipped him, but I couldn't. I needed to beat Dustin. Basically, I had to resort to simply repeating the word, "I'm canceling my AOL as of this date," and then asking the question, "Have you understood my request to cancel, and we have ended the legal requirement of this trial?" I had to repeat that over and over until he ended the call. Every time. Yes, because once this worked, we did it every day until the promotion was over. Between the three of us, we made about $60 a day for 3 weeks doing this. We talked to Dustin a lot. He hated us. We hated him because of the situation. In a different reality, I think Dustin and I could have been good friends. Maybe we are. Story 39. I had a computer class in 8th grade. Basically how to Photoshop and vector and such. Nothing too complicated. Most of the people in said class had some real difficulty with it. I did not. So I completed my assignments within the 90 minutes we had, and then derped around for the following 90 minutes each week until it was due. Sometimes I just browsed them interwebs. Sometimes I walked around helping other students. Basically, the teacher was cool with it since I helped others and had my stuff done. The computers were somewhat locked down. You couldn't access C:\/ or use the task manager, or download exe or zip or RAR files, such things. I could, however, edit shortcuts. So the shortcut to the designer thing, the vectoring program, was suddenly changed to C:\program files \designer instead of C:\program files \designer \designer.exe, and I could open the folder. I installed Process Explorer, alternate task manager to replace the one that was blocked, on the machine I always used, and it just started from there. This was really some years ago, so I ended up installing some instant messenger too, back when Skype wasn't a thing yet and chatting was still cool. And then, one day, I was browsing some innocent things in class, had already done my work, and my tab closed. I thought, that's odd. I reopened it and kept browsing. A few seconds later, it closed again. I noticed the mouse zip there this time. Oh, that's how you want to play it? I went to Designer and started to draw some random things, looking like I was working for a few minutes. And then, when I was off the hook, I figured out which program they used to remotely watch my screen, used my fake Designer shortcut to find it, used the Process Explorer to force quit it, and then just deleted it off of the HDD. The admin never again accessed my PC, just seeing it as offline, I'd expect. It's a bit of a legitimate loophole since I wasn't doing anything bad, but someone thought I should be working when I had nothing to do, and I stopped him from checking. And then a few months later, we all played Warcraft 3 on the network school machines because it was pretty easy to bypass their security. I learned how to beat tower defense maps in school. Who else can say that about their education? Story 40. Used to live in a really bad apartment building. The cockroach-infested, drug dealers on every level, management not giving a crap or doing anything about the complaints we put in kind of bad. Came home one morning to a pool of blood in the elevator. Decided it was time to move after 6 weeks. Problem was that I had signed a 1-year lease. Researched and found that if I could find someone to take over the lease, then I could get out. However, first I needed to notify the building management in writing and request permission to have someone assume the lease. After a bit of digging through the Landlord-Tenant Act, found out that management had to respond in writing within 7 days. Also found out that if they said no or just plain didn't respond, I held the right to terminate my lease without penalty. Sure enough, on day 8, I had not received any word from management, so I drafted up my "F you, I'm out" letter. The look on the girl's face was priceless. Me, I'm out. Here's my notice. Her, who's taking over the lease? Me, don't know. Not my problem anymore. Her, what do you mean it's not your problem anymore? Me, you had 7 days to respond to my request to have my lease assumed. You failed to do so, therefore, as per Article XX, can't remember which one, of the LT Act, I'm out of here. Adios, muchachos. Story 41. Many years back, I was working with the sound and lighting crew at a Christmas party for a large Honda dealership. They were giving away insane door prizes, to the point they gave away a 5-year lease on a car as the grand prize. Well, some dude gets this TV/VCR combo. He's completely disheartened because it was one of the crappier prizes. At the end of the night, this thing is still sitting on the stage. Nobody but us and the cleaners left. Merry Christmas to me. Now, wouldn't you know it, the girlfriend had the exact same one that was well out of warranty. Swapped the TVs in the box, took the one that was broken as crap, tossed it in the box, and was super careful to not damage the top factory seal. We just resealed the bottom, which nobody checks. Walmart guy didn't want to take it back because I didn't have the receipt. Fine, got in-store credit for like $300. Bought another large TV and walked out. Walked in the next day and returned that TV for cash. Again, they gave me a hard time, but you'd be amazed at what just being polite and firm will get you. Can't count the amount of times I've returned crap to Walmart. Never feel an ounce of regret as I hate that corporation. Nevertheless, I don't do it anymore as I'm not a kid with too much time on my hands, nor do I want to ever step foot in one again. Story 42. Right as the Super Nintendo hit the market, a local department store announced a video game tournament. I was a typical video game kid from the 90s at the time. I took the Nintendo vs. Sega issue very seriously. I drew up maps and characters to titles I wanted to make when I inevitably learned how to make video games. Nintendo Power subscriber, naturally I signed up. This wasn't the lauded Nintendo World Championships, mind you. This was a small-time event being run by a department store manager in the local shopping mall. There was no custom game cartridge involved. The game was, the still incredibly new, Super Mario World, and the contest was simply, score as many points as you can in X minutes. Might have been 10 minutes, might have been 5. Honestly, don't remember though. Some kids just flew through the levels as fast as they could, which would have served them well if the levels were increasingly more rewarding for completion, but they weren't. The other kids took to playing the first several levels with the intentional brutality of a boxing match. They moved through levels relatively quickly, but made sure to slug it out with every Goomba and Koopa Troopa they encountered. Scorched effin' earth. It was impressive. For a game these kids had ostensibly never played, they hit it hard. Green dino riding gangster knights of the Mushroom Kingdom apocalypse. I think a couple of them even made it off the opening island. I, on the other hand, being a sneaky little F that saved up $210, $199 USD plus a lowly 5% sales tax, of his allowance and lawn mowing money for a launch day, had already bought my SNES a couple days before and spent the previous evenings doing some serious research. My strategy was simple. I learned that you could quit a level by pausing the game and hitting select, but only if you had previously beaten it. So out of the gate, I made a speed run through the first level. Hardly touched any bad guys if I didn't have to. Why pass up all those points? That first level had a great gimme 1-up if you kicked a shell into the opening chorus line of Koopas. The victims that you claimed prior to getting your extra life racked up quite a few points too. Start, select, restart the level. Take out the chorus line and rack up the points again. One of the other kids saw what I was doing and followed suit, but by that time, I had found my rhythm. Start, select, restart, points. Start, select, restart, points. There was no catching up, and I took home the grand prize, a brand spanking new Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The next week, I sold the still new-in-the-box SNES via the class fields of the local paper for $175 of the easiest money I've ever made in my life. Or, alternately, made the bleeding-edge video game Beast that I trained on cost all of $35. So I know it's difficult to kind of have the foresight in the moment and you just want to make a profit and flip it as quickly as possible, but if it's a brand new, like limited edition Contest 1 SNES, particularly if you don't need it, just Put it in storage. Save it for 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, that thing would be worth a hell of a lot more than $175 if you tried to sell that on the market today. So just, something to keep in mind. You're kind of playing with house money at that point, but might as well maximize your profit. I guess kids don't think that way, though. Story 43. Broke college student here. Last year, I found the Holy Grail. I had just moved to a new house off campus, and across the street from me was a Cottage Inn pizza joint. Pretty convenient. So one day when I go to pick up my pizza, I see an ad for their new online rewards program. I was eating there pretty often, a couple times a week, so I thought it might be interesting to check out. Next order, I go online and sign up. The rewards program was all right, but not great. You had to spend about $50 or $60 to get a free pizza, but I'm already online, so I say F it and order it anyways. Then boom, there it was. After you completed the order, it took you to a screen letting you know your receipt would be emailed to you and gave you an estimated time that it would be ready. At the bottom, there was a little button that said, share on Facebook to get 10 bonus points. F yeah, a free breadstick was 10 points and 15 would get you a free cheesy garlic bread. At least I got a sign-up bonus, I thought. Oh God, was there so much more though? The next time I ordered, I decided to redeem my free breadsticks along with my order. Everything's going good and I get to the final page. I notice the button's there again. There's no way I could do it again, right? Wrong. Another 10 points. I'm not sure where the disconnect happened when setting up the online rewards program, but somebody messed up. Every single order I made, I got 10 rewards points, and when I had to share it on Facebook, I would just share to myself only so I didn't spam any feeds. Remember that a free 8-piece breadstick was 10 points, and a cheesy bread, enough to fill me up at my hungriest with a piece or two left over, was 15. The final kicker? You could effing get another 10 points every time you redeemed a free item. If you're decent at math, then yeah, you're right. That's legitimately unlimited free breadsticks. On demand. I effing ran the crap out of that deal. Another bonus, if you redeemed the free item and paid via credit card, it wouldn't charge your card and it would just show up as paid online, so no one at the restaurant ever realized how many rewards points I was using. Not like they probably would have gave a crap anyways. I used this crap like crazy. It lasted for over a year before they finally knocked the bonus down to 1 point for every order. That was a sad day, but there were weeks last year where I would have Cottage Inn 5 to 6 days a week. Never got sick of it. Best year of my life. Story 44. In Harvest Moon for SNES, once it turns night, it will stay night until you go to bed. One of the main things you're supposed to do in the game is get married to one of the girls in town. This takes a long time because you need to get them to like you, and you only have so many hours in the day, which in-game is obviously only a few minutes, before it turns to night and you can't interact with any of them, except Eve. She works at the bar, which is the only place open at night. You can literally get her to like you the proper level in just the first night if you're willing to take the time to do so. If you're playing on a ROM with save states, this is infinitely easier. You can also save state, check how much Eve likes you by reading her diary, and then load the save state so that you don't lose any of her affection by reading the diary. If you're diligent enough and it doesn't rain, you can get married to her on the first weekend. You can also clear out your entire field of small rocks and weeds in the first night using the same method. Getting all this done on the first night saves a tremendous amount of time, so you can get more done during the daytime when the shops are open. Also, I can't remember if I ever successfully did it, but I found out that if you use a Game Genie to put in a walk-through walls cheat, you can duplicate items by standing on top of them when you pick them up, instead of standing beside them. This means that the item you essentially use as an engagement ring that triggers the game to activate the wedding event can be picked up multiple times. So in theory, you could marry every girl in town. Story 45. So I collect games. I would consider myself a loyal customer to GameStop, although I'm not a big fan of things they've done in the past, and I buy many current games there. I feel it's the best place to go for used current games on the cheap. I liked how with systems such as the Wii, they would always keep the case if the trade-in came with it. However, with handheld systems such as the DS or 3DS, they would usually keep them loose. I never really liked this, as I wasn't getting what I fully paid for. They did not give a crap about these cases. Then I realized in the 3DS section, there actually were cases. If you picked one up and took it to the register, boom, case with the game. These weren't just store displays either. They were the full thing. So one day, the same day I realized this in fact, I'm perusing the section and find the case, complete by the way, for Kid Icarus Uprising. I had already bought the game a year earlier from that same GameStop, but I decided to test my luck with a little scheme that popped into my head. I would buy the game and return it using the little slip they give you with the game in it. You know, that yellow one they put all the games in? They don't record whether or not it has a case, so I should be able to return it. I bought the game, even though I already had it, and unfortunately they took the slip and put the game in the case. But fear not, reader, as I had another plan. You see, from all those years of buying games loose, I had many of those slips. So gently, I peeled the price tag off the case and stuck it over another slip. I put the game back in and returned it a few days later to a different GameStop. Boom. Free case. Needless to say, when I saw another game I needed the case for at that GameStop I returned it to, I did the exact same thing. Quick thing to keep in mind if you plan to do anything like this. Do not return and then buy another game on the same receipt. I got questioned when this happened with the second game. She gave me a refund, but said they weren't supposed to because this is a problem that they have, where people treat GS like a rental store and return games after they play them. Return, peruse around the store, and then buy. Also, don't do this very often. They'll catch on eventually, but only if you keep doing it repeatedly. Story 46. This is quite cathartic. Ex-boss, you are a effing idiot and you deserve to get your hole looped a little. I can't even tell you the industry cause it's way too niche, but over the time I worked at a certain company, I purchased thousands of their products at cost. High dollar, high margin, small volume consumables. There was no limit on what employees could purchase. My plan had been to offload it at maybe a 5 to 10% discount on some thrown together but polished website that could exist quietly in among the others who were peddling similar goods. Before I could finish my web project, my boss was unceremoniously let go, and it was only a matter of time before our little enclave was to be thrown out to the frat boys that ran the marketing department. So I quit, with a bunch of product, a little bit of money, and a decent chip on my shoulder. Over the next month, I flooded the market with 3 years of SKUS. The market was Amazon, which my former employers viewed as a plebeian corn exchange, one that vendors were not allowed anywhere near. It was a effing fire sale. I was charging half of what the company could. I was bundling it up and selling value packs. Everything you're not supposed to do with a high-end consumable. And I had crap loads of it. I looked at their website as I was writing this, and they dropped the price of their top-selling SKU by 10%. Story 47. I can think of plenty I've done in the years. Installing P2P programs like BearShare on the school computers so I could use them to download stuff for me because my home internet was too slow. Using a proxy to get around blocked sites that the DET blocked because they were pricks, like we couldn't even use Hotmail back in the day. Making a phishing site to steal all of my classmates and everyone else's RuneScape passwords. Shoulder surfing the password of one of my teachers so I could still visit blocked sites when 99% of the proxies got banned. Making a keygen for the simple AF print code thing we had that you had to pay a ridiculous amount of money just for printing. I think the equation for the print money was so stupid. So long as you found a number that worked that hadn't been used, you could input $999 and actually get that much. Using free domains like .tk to redirect to other proxies that were blocked in order to unblock them. Changing the DNS settings from the school to use Google DNS to avoid more blocks. But this was patched in like a week. Installing Counter-Strike source and having a LAN party in the computer room under the premise that we were doing work. Bring my own laptop to school and use my own 3G dongle when I got banned from using the school computer so I could do whatever the F I wanted. Finding out that pressing the buttons/options on a vending machine in the right order can allow you to reset the prices to whatever you want in order to clean them out for the cost of $1. Googled up a lot of combinations and regularly cleaned out my uni's vending machines until they removed them completely. Using Wi-Fi from people who didn't have a password set up on their connection, including buying a super good Wi-Fi card and antenna to use networks from far away. Using Honey to automatically apply discount coupons that I never even knew existed. Got a bit off topic at the end there, but whatever. Story 48. This isn't my story, but I feel partially responsible because I was thought to be the accomplice to the person who did pull it off, and I probably could have predicted this. Back in 11th grade, I was friends with this guy. Let's call him Victor. He was always looking for loopholes to make things easier for him, or just to spite people, namely me. We were the only 2 members of our clique in a certain psychology class, so we grew pretty close over that term. I ended up visiting our teacher earlier this year, who recalled that I was the better of the 2, going as far as to call Victor a quote, little crap. Probably rightfully so. This year was fairly uneventful in terms of life hacks, save for the occasional corrupt your Word document so you can procrastinate, which I totally don't continue to use even today. Nope. But then came our final assignment, which came in 2 parts. The first involved group work, where we'd work together to conduct a survey and analyze the results. The second was individual, where we would write a report from the angle of psychology and basically anything that we wanted. If memory serves, he chose something to do with Martian ideology. The crapstorm began with the survey. Victor and I were in the same group as another boy. Let's call him Kevin. Kevin was another friend, but he wasn't quite as close, so we mostly kept our interactions professional in comparison to Victor and mine, which usually ended up in a mess of me cursing at him and him snarkily laughing. So the survey. Day 1, 0 responses. Day 2, 3 responses. Day 3, 79 responses. I was very curious to find out who had managed that, since I knew Kevin wasn't going to go out of his way to get survey responses, and Victor was even lazier than him. So I confront Victor, asking if something happened with the survey. He said he went around and got some responses so that he wouldn't have to work as hard on the PowerPoint, but I was still suspicious. I was dating a girl at the time. Let's call her Rachel. Rachel and Victor were also very close, with the former referring to the latter as her female dog. We had a mocking love triangle. So I go up to Rachel and ask if she knows anything about this survey. She denies it, but I'm very good at facial manipulation, so I can tell when someone is lying. After asking further, I found out that Victor had asked her to forge all those answers instead of going around asking people. You might not think this is that big a deal. It's not. The big deal was the fact that he did it behind my back and that she didn't clear it by me despite knowing that I was working with Victor on it. So I go nuts at Victor, and he, being the little crap he is, assured me that our teacher would never know, and that everything would be fine. He ended up being right, and I kept that secret until I saw my teacher again this year, which ended up being the context for the little crap remark. The part that was the personal part. The next loophole sent the entire effing district into such a frenzy that they had to change their entire system for academic integrity. Victor was taking a law class at the same time as the psychology class, and had to report to right there too. I remember him asking me to edit his psychology report, and I did, making sure to mention that if he liked, I'd edit his law report too. He seemed pretty nervous when he declined, which made me think he was procrastinating or something. I was so wrong. 2 weeks after we'd handed in the reports, Victor gets called out by our teacher, and I see his law teacher standing outside too. He comes back with that smirk of his again, and a very frustrated psychology teacher. He refuses to tell me what's going on. The next day, he's called down to the office. Again, he comes back with his smirk and no explanation. We also happen to be taking microeconomics at the time, and I was very close with the teacher. I find out from him that Victor had handed in the same paper to 2 different courses, identical save for the title pages. Some schools say you can do this, some schools say you can't. Other schools don't think students are smart enough to come up with this idea. My school was the latter, and my school had no effing clue how to deal with the situation. Is it plagiarism? Of himself? With both papers having been submitted at the exact same time? Made no sense. The last month of the school year was filled with staff meetings discussing how to deal with the situation. How did Victor justify himself? Look at all the utility I've derived from that paper. He got away with 3 finals with A's. 1 for psych, 1 for law, and 1 for microeconomics. I haven't talked much to him recently, but I remember our last conversation involved his university not having any laws against this yet. Story 49. So last year, my sons and I stayed for a few days at the Kalahari Water Resort for a conference. When we checked in, we were given 3 gift cards with about $75 so that we could purchase a few meals for our stay. These meals were included as part of the conference. Rather than each of us using our gift cards for each meal, I just decided to use 1 card up at a time so that we could keep track of any leftover money we might have, because they said we could use any leftover money from our meals in the arcade. After the first night, we used up 1 gift card almost completely. The next morning, I told my sons we could finish up the money that was on that card at the arcade. I couldn't find the receipt, so I couldn't remember exactly how much was left on the card, but it was something like $5.75. When I swiped the gift card at the arcade, it registered $75 again. Thinking I had used the wrong card, I swiped my other cards and each of them had $75. I couldn't believe it. Somehow the card was charged overnight. Wanting to see if it would happen again, on our second day, we spent 2 full amounts of our gift cards on food and the arcade and saved just enough on the last card for food. Sure enough, the next morning we went down to the arcade and all 3 cards have been recharged again up to $75. On our last day, the manager on duty at the arcade said we couldn't use gift cards to use at the arcade, as that was the policy because the arcade was run by a different company than the resort. I explained that we had been allowed the day before. He ended up calling someone to get authorization to override the computer to allow us to use our remaining money. So we made out like bandits. Over $150 in free money. Story 50. So this was back when the Xbox 360s had the notorious RROD. I had bought a brand new Xbox 360 Elite from Walmart. Took it home and not even 2 days go by before RROD. I spend the next 2 days searching for the sales receipt before making the decision to just buy another one and use that receipt to return the RROD. What I didn't know was that they scanned the serial number off the unit through a window on the box and it saved on the receipt. So no returning one unit with another and was told to GTFO in so many words when I tried it. So I went back home and started Googling how to fix a RROD machine and quickly learned how to disassemble the machine. Then another video on YouTube explained how using a hairdryer on the void if removed Microsoft warranty sticker would cause it to just slide off. So I took part of the RROD unit and the new unit, keeping the stickers intact, and swapped the internals, then returned the machine with the serial number matching the receipt. After about a day or so, a light bulb went off. I quickly found a ROD unit on Craigslist for about $50, went and bought a new unit for $300 this time from Best Buy, did the swap, returned the now ROD new unit, and resold the now working unit on Craigs for $250, and the refund hit my card a few days later. I did this a couple times a week and never went to the same store in the same month. At one point, I bought a lot of non-fictional units on eBay, a total of 50 for less than $10 per unit. I did this at every store that sold Xbox. Certain stores started to require an ID for returns, so I just stopped going to that chain and expanded my territory. At first, it was local stores at GameStop, Best Buy, and Walmart, but quickly expanded to others such as Target, Sears, Kmart, and Toys R Us. I do each store once a week and a different store a week, with only having spent a few hundred out of pocket. It got to the point where I could do the swap of a good unit with a bad unit within 10 to 15 minutes, and would have more units ready to return than I was returning, and had to up my pace to a couple stores a day. I'd hit all 4 Walmarts in a 50-mile radius and so on with the other stores on different days. This resulted in me driving a couple hundred miles every week for almost 3 years. The only downside was that it was taking longer and longer to sell the units locally, but that was fixed with eBay. In the end, I ended up buying my first new car with the cash I was making, plus so much more. Too bad it all ended within a year of the Xbox One being released. Story 51. Back in the mid-1980s, my high school had a payphone in the hallway by the lockers near the south entrance. In the years before everybody and his brother and his dog had cell phones, this is what we kids used to call our parents or our coke dealers or whatever. At the time, I had a pen pal in another state. You know, snail letters with stamps in the mail. That turned into a long-distance relationship. Since my mother would never allow long-distance calls from home, I would save up batches of quarters to feed into the payphone so I could talk to my distant GF during lunch break. You would dial the number, and the bickering Betty recording would announce something like, "Please deposit $1.25, please." One day at the designated time, I called GF's number, but noticed that bickering Betty was absent. The call went right through without feeding the phone any quarters. Someone must have already paid the phone and it glitched or something, I thought, believing that we would get cut off after the first 3 minutes. But it never happened. 3 minutes stretched to 5, 10, 20. For some inexplicable reason, the payphone had glitched. It happened again the next day, and the next. Since nobody else ever used the phone for long-distance calls, I was the only nerd in school who had a girlfriend in another state who I'd never met face-to-face. I seemed to be the only one who knew what was happening. So I started getting bolder. I started calling random numbers around the country. Then I went international. looking up country codes and prefixes to see what I could connect to. At one point, I random crank called a pizza joint in Sydney, Australia, and ordered a large pepperoni from 10,000 miles away, until they asked for a callback number I didn't have, and I hung up. In the pre-internet era, a 15-year-old connecting to distant continents was a thrill like no other. I felt like Kevin goddamn McNick, even though I had done nothing to cause this glitch. I wasn't a freaker, just some random putz who stumbled upon a telephonic goldmine. Then, around day 6, Bell Atlantic apparently discovered the cock-up and fixed it. No more globetrotting over the phone wires for me, but it was totally worth it. I imagine I still live in the memory of some random Aussie pizza worker. Story 52. I should probably preface this by explaining that I have a bit of rage that comes about on occasion when I drink and play games online. I used to break a lot of controllers. 6 broken XB1 controllers in under 6 months. I believe that's what most people would consider a substantial amount of collateral. So every time I'd break a controller, I would drive up to a Walmart, buy an identical wireless controller, wait a day, place my broken controller in the new box, and return it. All I ever heard was, "What's wrong with it?" Most of the time, the controller had been so nearly obliterated that it'd have to be glued back together to remain in one piece. 5 times, I'd returned my broken controllers. On about the 4th or 5th time, I didn't even bother waiting to return the controller the next day. I'd just buy it, replace the new controller with the broken one in my car, and walk back inside for a full refund. The 6th time, about 2 or 3 days after Christmas, I thought, F it, and shattered my last controller, as I normally had because the wear had dimmed down the sensory on the right trigger. I then proceeded to drive up to Walmart and swap it out inside my car. However, this didn't quite go according to plan. When I went inside, the returns employee went about their usual "what's wrong with it" runaround, and I said the analog stick wasn't exactly functional, as it dropped out of its socket. She then proceeded to open the box, look at the controller, pop the battery cover off, and began mumbling the numbers to herself. Then she put the box up next to the broken controller in the air to examine and compare the 2 serial numbers so that I could see what she was doing as she was doing it. "This isn't the right controller. This doesn't go with this Xbox." Crap. And I said, really? That's interesting. Are you sure? She then looked down for a second and looked up with that, "Are you effing joking me right now?" look, and I held my expression. "Sir, this says you bought this controller 10 minutes ago." Damn, she was good. I tried to give her the most emotionless expression I could muster. She proceeded to put the broken controller back inside the box, handing me the intended returns. "You win this round, Shantea." To this very day, I've yet to return any more controllers to Walmart. Story 53. Target had a price matching guarantee with BestBuy.com and any publicly published official competitor pricing. They also had a deal going where if you reserved a FIFA game, Watch Dogs, COD Black Ops, and a few others for $1, you got $20 off the then new Tomb Raider, which was still the regular $60. However, Best Buy had a sale on Tomb Raider. It was $20. Most Targets allowed me to exploit this to various degrees, reserving a game for $1, applying the price match Tomb Raider price at $20, and then the $20 off discount hitting. Sometimes 1 Xbox and 1 PlayStation copy per store, but some stores let me wipe out their whole stock at $1 a pop. The cool thing is Target had a limited steel case edition of Tomb Raider, and to top it all off, I went and returned the roughly 50 $1 reserve cards for my cash back, essentially meaning I got about 50 copies of Tomb Raider, a $60 value, for free. The best uses of this were tipping someone with one at Red Robin and the argument at GameStop when I tried trading one in, Xbox. They said I couldn't trade in a sealed game, so I left, opened a PlayStation copy, and they had to accept it since she knew it was a different game than the one she saw sealed. Story 54. In high school, our login access to computers in a private networked drive/folder to save files to. Since the computer would delete any files created after logging in, we all saved our files on the private network drive/folder, which we could access from any computer on campus upon logging in. It was managed by a novel login system to manage computer access for everyone at the school, from the principal and the teachers to students alike. Everyone would save their files to their own private network drive/folder. Using boot to USB option loaded and ran a program that would list local user login information. Discovering that the admin username to the local machine was set with no password. Check different systems. They all had the admin username set as a local admin user. booting the computer up to the novel login prompt, and for craps and giggles, tried the user set and left the password blank. What do you know? It worked, and I then realized the account set was a supervisor account providing unrestricted access to all the files, including all the user's network drives, stored in all volumes on the network. One was the drive that contained all user files on their private network drive. One kid found out how to do it by watching me log in, and about a week later, I was called to the school resource officer, but I only spoke to the principal and vice principal, who had been alerted when a student user suddenly had super user rights. The kid, I came to find out, had set his own user account to a super user, and turned me in saying I was the one that showed him how to do it. I asked them if they had any proof of my wrongdoings on the network via the server log files. The head school system sysadmin said he did not. Being a stupid, cocky kid, I eventually said that I could help them securing the network/novel/computers, and they declined my offer. I told them that if I had done what they alleged me of doing, I could have deleted every single file on the network and the backups to it, but told them theoretically I wouldn't have done that. I expected leniency, and boy was I wrong. They suspended me with the reason violation of network policy. The principal stated that she did not need evidence of wrongdoing, that if they thought I did it, they could suspend me/find me guilty without solid evidence. I got a week-long suspension for it, and before I left, I accessed the super user again and happened to find the guy that ratted me out suddenly lost all of his files unexpectedly, and no backups could restore his files, since the backup drives were all discovered to have a blank folder with everything else untouched. Yeah, so if you're going to do something like this, be prepared to reap the consequences of what you've sown. You could have used this power for good, but you decided to be a little punk about it. So yeah, you deserve to lose your files there. Snitches get stitches. Story 55. Around 2004-ish, I discovered some new .com video game company that was trying to be a EB Games or GameStop, but they were trying to operate online only. They did online trade-ins. You would go to their site and pick what games you were trading in. They would tell you the value that they're currently giving. You'd make a list and they'd let you print from their site a free shipping label to mail the games in. They didn't even lower the amount given based on condition either. You type a game in, there was only one price. You had the option between getting your trade-in via PayPal, check, or store credit, and they gave the same amount of money no matter how you picked to be paid. I went to ebgames.com, who was famous at the time for having tons of sub-$5 games and free shipping if you were a member of their rewards club. I typed in some of the cheap EB games into this new game site and saw that games going for under $5 at EB had trade-in values of $15 to $30 at the new site. I tested the waters and sent in 10 $2 games. They accepted them. I had over $200 in my PayPal account from one transaction. They literally had no limits. You could send in 10,000 copies of one game and they would pay out. I realized then I had a money-making loophole at my disposal. I proceeded to buy every game under $5 from ebgames.com. It came in a huge box in one shipment. I went to the new game site, typed in all the games I was wanting to trade in, slapped on their free shipping label, and took the 50-pound box to the post office. About 2 weeks later, I had over $4,000 in my PayPal account. I proceeded to do this for a few months, but EB Games never got huge stock and cheap games in again. So it would be smaller shipments for as little as $50, sometimes up to $300 at a time, but I pretty much cleared out EB Games online. A few months later, I go to the new game site one day, looking at trade-in values and seeing what I could get from them. They have a bulletin posted on their homepage. They say they're closing down shop and that the interest for their site never reached the levels they wanted, blah blah blah. And that was the day my hustle was over. Story 56. I worked at a company for about 6 months that had its own employee canteen. It was buffet style where you paid a fixed amount for all you could eat. To access the canteen, we passed through turnstiles. The turnstiles had an optical code reader on the top that would scan a ticket, which would give you access. The tickets, good for a week, 5 meals, were purchased at another machine just outside the canteen. This machine that sold the tickets accepted credit cards. One could insert the card, which was still sticking about halfway out, and then press a button to authorize payment. Then the machine would print the ticket while a small LCD screen would show payment accepted. I noticed one day that the ticket started printing a fraction of a second before the payment accepted would flash on the screen. The next week, I was ready with my hand on the credit card to quickly remove it as soon as I heard the printing start. I did, and then showed no payment accepted on screen, yet the ticket still came out. I checked my credit card later and found no payments made. After about 3 months of free lunch, one day the ticket dispensing machine was out of order for a couple days. When it was back online again, this exploit no longer worked. Story 57. The time I got $350 of music for free from iTunes. When I was 14 to 15-ish, I was buying songs on iTunes on my iPod when I realized that my balance hadn't gone down for my purchases, so clearly I saw my opportunity at once. I bought $350 worth of music and movies as fast as I could before the balance updated and suddenly said $345 or something like this. I freaked the flip out when I discovered that my genius loophole was not paying off at all and my mom's credit card was about to bear the full amount owing. Well, my mom came to me and was not amused about current transactions the next day, and I assured her that it was just some mistake and I'd try to sort it out. Sorry for putting you at risk, Mom. I emailed Apple support and pleaded my case desperately. The balance showed I had money, so I didn't know I was racking up debt. They responded weeks later and refunded me for 3 of the songs. Just 3. They said they don't usually do more than that for mistaken transactions. That barely changed the situation at all. Everyone at school had a great time laughing at me when I told the story at this point, and they all kept thinking I was so dumb to try and scam Apple like this, and I would have to find a way to pay it. That really put me into such a state of determination, I knew what I must do. This was my time to win back that money for me, my mom, but most of all, for the redemption and restoration of my rep at school. I put all my non-legal legal knowledge into action, putting together the most lawyery sounding email I knew how to construct. I argued that iTunes has refunded me already. Immediately, that meant they acknowledged that their system was at fault and I shouldn't be held responsible for this. I said they had set a precedent and clearly the same situation applied to all the songs that were bought in this period of time, and I was seeking a refund on all the items in question. Waiting was the hardest part. The jokes were still rolling in at school for some time, until one fateful day, an email. They refunded the whole thing. I could keep all the songs I had, but they took back the movies I bought. Victory. But that could have ended so very badly. Story 58. Not quite a loophole, but I played the odds at my ex's company Christmas raffle. $1 ticket. Stubs put in a box to be drawn at random. Roughly 60 people present. Prizes were several big screen TVs, a Garmin GPS, a Wii games, and an assortment of gift cards for restaurants, Macy's, and local movie theaters. While she was in the bathroom, I observed that the majority of her colleagues were only going in on maybe $5 to $15 tickets. Maybe they'll get something. It's all in good fun. I walked up to her manager leading the raffle and discreetly put $50 on it and made some small talk with her manager to bore anybody watching me to walk up. My girl returns to our table. I follow suit and lean in. Babe, you listen for these 25. I got the, $50? Shh, trust me. Fast forward 45 minutes later. Raffle done. She and I go for a pee break. While I'm putting out the fire in a stall, I overhear some chatter. Bro, can you effing believe that? Both TVs, a GPS, the effing Wii, a couple games, and how many gift cards? Such effing bullcrap, bro. We reconvene in the hall, and she can't wait to tell me what she overheard in the bathroom with a lot of dagger glares. We drove home with the trunk and back seat full, and you damn right we got down when we got home. On Wii Bowling. On the new 50-inch plasma. Home in record time, too. Thanks, Garmin. Ate like kings the next weekend, too. Caught a couple movies. Best $50 I ever spent. Just a random lucid thought, but it's just amazing how, in the span of the last 10 to 15 years, like at the time, Wii Bowling, a 50-inch TV, and a Garmin GPS, that was like cutting-edge technology. Now he probably couldn't sell all of that for a combined $20. Man, dude, technology is just evolving at warp speed. Story 59. Growing up in the 90s, my mom was one of those kids need to be playing outside all the time kind of moms, and was very strict about how much TV/computer time we got. We only got to watch TV or play video games for 30 minutes on school nights, and an hour on weekends. However, we were allowed to watch TV or use the computer more if it was educational. So, needless to say, I watched a lot of PBS and played a hell of a lot of Jumpstart PC games. Eventually, I learned that my mom considered programming to be educational. So, in 3rd grade, I got all the old programming books from the late 80s at my local library, and learned to code crappy games in BASIC on my parents' old Commodore 64. Later that year, I discovered emulators and ROMs, and would play NES and Game Boy games in a window, with the ROM opened and a text file next to it. I'd play through all these classic games I never had access to, and just tell my mom it was a learn to code game from Nintendo. Story 60. Went to a party at 16. First full-blown party, hosted by a company rather than someone we knew. To give you perspective, 16-year-olds can drink beer in Belgium, so 16-year-olds act irresponsibly around beer like 18-plus kids do in the US, from what I hear/see, since they can finally legally experiment with it. Drinking liquor isn't legal, but hardly anyone will make a point of it, unless you're wasted, especially if it's mixed with a soft drink. So I get to the party, and of course we all start with beer. We're planning for the first night of drinking and hangover ever. Everyone is trying to make it a legendary night. Didn't take us long to move on to Red Bull and vodka. Now, a Red Bull and vodka costs 3 tickets, about €2 per ticket, while a regular Red Bull only costs 2. If you order a Red Bull and vodka, you literally just get the same 2-ticket can and a cup with some vodka. So drunk me goes up to the bar and formulates, if you can get a R&V for 3 and a Red Bull for 2, does that mean I can get just the vodka for 1 ticket? The girl behind the counter giggled at the idea since it makes perfect mathematical sense, but she walks back to the older lady overseeing the operation, who's less amused by my idea. However, she apparently told the girl that I can have the order, but then no more, for anyone. The second she told me, I slammed down everyone's ticket card I had on me, cheaper if you bought a whole set of them, and walked back with 25-ish shots of vodka, poured together in 5 full cups. Best night ever. Worst first hangover ever. Legendary. Story 61. Worked at a unionized grocery store/gas station chain. Wages and raises were predetermined by department. Starting gas pump attendant got X, starting cashier got Y, starting produce clerk got Z, etc. First raise occurred after 1 year of work, second occurred after 2 years, and so on. However, if you moved from one department to another, they would need to set your wage at an amount based on the tiers in that department, and they couldn't give you less than your previous position. At the time, $7.70 was minimum wage here, if I recall correctly. So I started as a pump attendant making $7.70, Tier 1, then bakery making $8.50, Tier 1, then produce making $9.30, Tier 2, then cashier making $10.15, Tier 3. The jobs were so easy that I could pretty much learn most of what I needed to know within 3 months. It took me 1 year and 2 months to get from $7.70 to $10.15, which is about a 33% raise, or 28% annually. By then, the managers had kind of caught on to my game, and told me that although they couldn't stop me from doing it, that it was frowned upon. So I ended up leaving a couple months later to get another part-time job making $10.50 plus bonus. When the review for that job came around a year later and I only got a 15% raise, I pieced out and just hopped for a few more years till I finished university. Story 62. AP History class learning about the monopolies/oligopoly of the oil industry back in the day. My teacher set up a game where there was an oil industry, railway industry, and exporter industry. Each industry had several companies, teams, that were all competing against one another. Now, the main point of this was to show how unfair things were, so each team could only produce so much oil, or transport so many items and sell so many drums of oil. On top of that, you had costs you had to deduct out of your profits. My team was an oil company that was supposed to get trounced by ABC Oil, who could produce twice as much oil as us for half the cost. The setup was, as an oil company, you had to strike a deal with an exporter to buy your oil at a negotiated price, and then make a deal with the railroad to transport your oil to the exporter. The teacher gave us like 10 minutes to make the deals, then would tell us how many days had passed and how much oil we made. Make some bad deals and your company goes under. The trick was he gave the first team to seal deals an extra $1,000 each day. I forget the amount. My team figured out it was better to just quickly sell 1 barrel of oil and get the bonus than to actually try for profits. We technically won the game, but teacher said we would have been sued and ruled our actions illegal. Story 63. When the iPhone 2 came out, you could go to Best Buy and add lines onto your phone account. Family plan. For each line you added onto your phone account, you would get a brand new iPhone, 32 GB, for like $199. Mind you, the phones were rare in other countries and were just hard to get early on, period. So at the first of the month, you go into Best Buy, add 5 family lines onto your account, buy 5 iPhones for $200 a piece, or $1,000, and take the chip out of the iPhone. Listed on eBay for $700 to $750. Sell 5 iPhones for $700 to $750 per phone. eBay takes their $50, so $650 to $700 left over. You cancel the family plan and the 5 lines for $175, $425 to $525 left over. Each line was $175 to cancel, and after all is said and done, you walk away with $425 times 5, or $525 times 5, or $2125, or $2,625 each month. When the month starts over, you go in and do it all over again. Did this for quite a few months, and finally AT&T caught up and increased the cancellation fee per line to like $375, and the iPhone price reductions were lessened as well. It was very lucrative while it worked. I also heard a story about a guy who would buy US currency. Apparently, the US was trying to circulate $1 coins to replace the paper dollar, and to do so, they would allow you as a citizen to purchase a $1 to $1 rate for the coins, and the government would pay for the shipping and handling of the coins. So this guy would take his huge credit cards and purchase a $1 to $1 amount and get it all shipped free of charge to himself. He would then take said coins to the bank, deposit them into his account, and pay off his credit card and rinse and repeat. I heard he did this enough times so that his credit card issuers would send him free Visa gift cards for like $500, and he also accumulated enough frequent flyer miles to fly around the world for the rest of his life. It stopped as soon as the government became wise to his plan and started making the purchaser pay for the shipping and handling, or at least some of the cost. Story 64. I was a freshman in high school band. It was a requirement to participate in the yearly high school band fundraiser. I roamed the neighborhood, knocking on doors, hoping to persuade complete strangers to buy band candy. Mass telemarketing didn't exist back then, so most people graciously opened their front door to listen to my sales pitch. I had a 10% success rate of closing the deal. Then it happened. A very charming elderly lady told me she couldn't have sweets. She was a diabetic, but she didn't want me to leave empty-handed. She gave me a donation instead. A light bulb went off in my head. A bitter old man answered the next house. He wasn't interested in buying any band candy. Before he could shut the door in my face, I asked him, "Would you like to make a small donation instead?" To my surprise, he did. I threw away my sales pitch and began asking for donations. My 10% success rate quickly jumped to 80%. This was a real eye-opening experience. A box of candy cost $3. If I received a $5 donation, I graciously gave them a box of candy as a goodwill gesture. They looked at me in disbelief when I handed them a free box of candy. I ended up getting rid of all my fundraising merchandise. The band received their money, and I kept my commission fee. Every year, I looked forward to that band fundraiser. It was my cash cow, and I hated to see it leave, but this was my last year in band, and there were no more fundraisers. My friend and I decided to end the year with a bang. We cleaned up a discarded mayonnaise jar, removed the old mayo label, and attached a label of our own that read Band Fund. We wore our band uniforms around the neighborhood and asked for donations. It worked like a charm. Everyone was in a giving mood. We were making buku money throughout the town. It was early afternoon, and the bars were gradually filling up with drunks and has-beens. We decided to try our luck by hitting up some of the seedier taverns. Our presence was well received, and everyone donated to our cause except this one lady. She told us she already gave. We knew this was a blatant lie, so we gave her the stink eye. We ended up making over $450 that afternoon. I now know how televangelists feel, and it feels good. Story 65. Back in high school, this kid and I were buying a pop from the pop machine. I selected mine, and the machine arm is slow at grabbing the pop. So my friend started shoving his dollar bill into the machine while the arm was grabbing my pop. The machine beeped and out came my dollar bill. I took my pop and dollar bill. I got a free 20-ounce pop for months till one day they fixed it. A bunch of other kids found out and ended up doing it too. Once they fixed it, we found another way to get free pop. The arm brings the pop and this little door opens. We grabbed the pop, pushed the arm back, and then reached in through the door and grabbed more free pop. Of course, the door was small, so we had to find a small guy to fit their arm in, and he said it hurt as people requested pop that was hard to reach for him. To fix the arm that we pushed, all we had to do was unplug and plug back in the machine, and it reset itself. And it was like nothing happened. So, random fact of the day, but I read somewhere that approximately 10 people die each year from having vending machines falling on top of them. Kind of a random throwaway fact, but after listening to this story and reading it out loud, it's stuff like this that makes you understand that fact is probably legit. Story 66. When I moved into my dorm this semester, I got a folder with a bunch of deals to places around town that were meant just for college students. One of them was a coupon for free Cinesticks at the local Domino's, good that expired after 1 month. I decided to use the code online instead of ordering delivery. The Domino's was about 2 blocks away, and thereby not give the coupon to the delivery guy. It was a code that only worked in specific places, and I found it could work more than once, with no minimum order. I basically got free Cinesticks on any day that I wanted to for a solid 4 months before they finally got rid of the online code. I consistently walk into Domino's after placing my order, pick up my free Cinesticks for $0.00, and walk out. I'm sure they thought it was weird that I came in so often and just ordered Cinesticks with nothing else, but a lot of people thought I just ordered and paid online already. Nobody asked to see my coupon. Additionally, there's a freebie site that I frequent via subreddit/freebies where they have daily deals on cheap electronics. For a while, the price and shipping was free. Every time you wanted to get a freebie, you had to sign up using a new account. For some strange reason, you could sign up using the same email as before. They never actually sent you a confirmation for creating an account. I could have gotten boatloads of the same freebies if I wanted. Phone cases, charging cords, screen protectors, and wipes, etc. But I limited myself to one because their website was pretty slow and not worth a ton of effort. Story 67. I used to work for CVS on their help desk. It was the worst job I ever had. Never take a job on the CVS help desk or the pharmacy help desk. They're separate but similar. I was having stress-related issues. I would just start crying at random times, for instance. Sometimes my head and arms would go numb, stuff like that. We had 30 people answering phones with a customer base of around 300,000. So by 8 a.m., the hold time would be an hour to 2 hours, and management would always freak out. They couldn't stand to have these huge hold times, and the solution was obvious. You need to hire more people, like a lot of them, like over 100. But that never happened. It was never part of the discussion. The call queue was always full, and there was 0 seconds, literally, between calls. So the second you finished with one person, you'd have another one right on top of that. One of their solutions was to take 2 calls. Always take 2 calls at the same time. That way, we get through the queue twice as fast. Seriously, what the F are you talking about? I mean, yeah, I have 3 phone lines, so it's possible for me to have 2 calls, but I can't help 2 effing people at the same effing time. Which brings me to the loophole I discovered. There is a special call queue for the ops people to call. If they found a virus or a machine went down at a factory or some other bullcrap when they called, their call would route in front of all the other calls, and your phone would ring even if you were on another call. You had to take that call. And they always involved bullcrap that would take 20 to 30 minutes to deal with. It was just annoying noise and an already massively crappy job. But if you had 2 calls, then those special calls couldn't route to my phone. The third line would never take a call in case we had to dial out. From then on, I was a 2-call taking mother effer. I was hammering that second call. Hell, if someone annoyed me on the call I was on, like asked for my manager, I would say, sure, hold on, put him on hold and never go back. They always hang up. Thing was, we couldn't escalate to a manager. The managers wouldn't take any forwarded calls, so I just stopped asking and just left people in the hold queue. Regardless, I had the best call stats in the group. Got a nice bonus and a raise, then gave my 2 weeks notice and GTFO. Story 68. I have 2 loopholes that have worked out very well for me. My first job out of college was working for a large software reseller. Part of the new hire training was to take different training classes provided by the different software vendors. One of the larger vendors tied their training to rewards in order to get more people to do their training. For every online training course you took, and subsequently passed a 10-question test on the information covered, you would earn 5 rewards points. You could use these points to buy a range of items, from little things, water bottles, headphones, etc., to much larger ticket items, TVs, and golf clubs. Each of these training courses and tests were about an hour long. Since I was new and didn't really have much else to do, I figured I would get started and see how many points I could accumulate. I took a handful of trainings over the next few days, and was getting pretty burned out pretty quick, until I accidentally made a discovery that completely changed things. Once you took the test at the end of the training and submitted for grading, the system would tell you if you passed or failed, along with what questions you got wrong, and then a link to retake the course. However, I discovered that if I just hit the back button on my browser, it would take me back to the test and change my answers. Instead of doing hour-long training courses, I would just skip to the end, enter all the same answer for all the multiple choice questions, find out what I got wrong, go back and change them to the right answers, and resubmit. What had been taking an hour to do was now taking less than 3 minutes. Over the course of 2 weeks, I took close to 500 training classes, earning myself enough points to buy a full set of tailor-made golf clubs, a Gary Fisher mountain bike, a 55-inch TV, in 2006 when these were selling for several $1,000s, round-trip airfare to Vegas, and several other smaller items. About a month after I had taken my last test and used up all my points, the software company fired the company that they hired to set up the training and stopped issuing any kind of training rewards. Around that same time, I found an online consulting company. They would find people who worked in various industries and match them up with companies that were researching those industries. The consulting company would pay you somewhere in the range of $100 to $250 per hour to consult for them. I set up my profile and got 1 or 2 consulting interviews. However, since I was pretty new to the industry, it wasn't long before they realized that I really didn't know anything and the interviews stopped coming in. But somehow, about a year later, I started getting survey requests from them. Their system somehow identified me as a senior vice president of my company, even though I didn't even work there anymore. The survey paid $75 for about 10 minutes. I figured I'd check it out. Might as well give it a shot for $75. Took the survey, and about a week later had $75 in my PayPal account. I figured that it must have been their mistake, but I'd take the free money and move on. Except the surveys kept coming, and the money kept coming. I was getting 2 to 3 surveys per month. As long as I kept saying on the survey that I was knowledgeable about market trends, I could take them. It's been 8 years, and they're still coming. I estimate that I've made close to $20,000 in that time answering this company's stupid IT trend surveys. Story 69. Oh man, mine didn't rack in any huge amounts of cash or break a corporation or anything like that, but it was still pretty good. So about 6 years ago, my aunt and her super rich husband bought a local bowling alley and renovated it into a new, pimped-up bowling alley. I was about 12 when they finished it, and one of the improvements they made to it was that they added a pretty decently sized arcade to it, with ticket dispensers and prizes and everything. The games could only be played by using those coins made specifically for their arcade, and my aunt, being the owner of the place, would buy me a handful of those coins whenever my family stopped by. I spent a pretty damn decent amount of time in that arcade. Anyways, now it's time I talk about what led up to my exploit. After a while in this arcade, I found a specific game in the arcade different from the rest. Most used the coins to activate the game, but one game in the middle of the arcade would have you drop the coins into a slot from the top of the machine. The coins would then slide down a set of rails and then fall into a set of spinning slots at the bottom of the machine. Important note, they would spin around a decorated pole in the middle that never moved. Remember that. If you were lucky enough to get the coin to fall into one of those spinning slots, you would either win a set amount of tickets or, if the drop was timed perfectly with the smallest slot, a jackpot. There were 4 different slots on the top of the machine that you could drop coins from, one on each side of the machine, and each one had its own jackpot associated with it. And the jackpot would build up as people missed, possibly going up into the hundreds. After a while, I realized something extremely critical. If you pinch the end of the coin between your fingers, your coins get the coin almost all the way into the slot at the top and onto the rails inside of the machine. That meant that once you let go of the coin, it would go down those rails at almost the same speed every single time. That's single-handedly the biggest random variable of the game, and it was that easy to control. After that, I could just analyze when to drop the coins by trial and error. I would make mental notes of the position of the spinning slots and juxtaposed to the designs on the stationary pole in the middle when I dropped a coin. If the coin missed, I would let the spinning slots line up differently next time until I got the right position. It took a little skill, but really was pretty damn easy after learning the coin trick. Eventually, I got so good at seeing this opening, I would show up to the bowling alley, see the jackpot on each side of the machine that other people had racked up, and collect all of them at once, and then pick the side that was the easiest, and would keep hitting it, over and over again. Sometimes, when I was patient or could distract myself from bowling, I would wait for other people to build up the jackpot again, and then walk over with a couple of coins and win it all again. I would get entire crowds watching me, going, "Look at this freaking kid," while I pulled out hundreds of tickets with each handful of coins. I would learn to drop the coins in swiftly enough so that people couldn't tell I was doing it too weirdly and copy me. I even had an employee watch me once to make sure I wasn't cheating. I don't know how I could have cheated in the first place, but whatever. I got thousands of tickets this way. I think I'm the reason that they eventually switched from tickets as currency to plastic cards that kept track of the virtual points you earned from the games played. And doubly sadly, that meant the coin machine was no longer usable. I remember running the ticket dispensers from that game out twice in one sitting, and could earn top shelf prizes after only a couple visits. I got a Nerf gun, a toy helicopter, and even a freaking handheld boombox from that. It was heaven for 12-year-old me up until that point. TLDR, I found out a pretty simple exploit to a coin game at my local arcade/bowling alley. Learned to perfect it, amaze the other kids and adults there, and eventually got to buy out the top shelf prizes with the thousands of tickets I earned. It was the tits. Story 70. Floating sodas was a trick I used in college when I waited tables. When a large group would come in, the first thing I would ask is if they were all separate checks. If so, I would create that many separate checks in the computer and only ring up one soft drink on the first check. We could move food from check to check in the computer, so after everyone had ordered food, I'd print the first check and then move the soft drink to the second check. After printing the second check, I would move it to the third check, and so on until all checks were printed with a soft drink on them. After everyone pays me, mostly in cash, I close out the checks with a free water rung up on them. If a customer paid with a card, I would add a soft drink to their check before running the card so the total would be the same as the check I gave them. For example, let's say I have a table of 10 and everyone is paying cash, which was pretty common during lunch. I ring up one soft drink at $1.99 and move it to all 10 checks. Everyone pays me for their soft drink, but when I closed the checks, I only owed the restaurant for one. That's an extra $17.91 cash in my tip pocket, plus whatever the customers tip me as well. I did this for 2 years. I'm not proud of my actions, but I'm kind of proud that I came up with it by myself. Years later, my brother and I were talking about our table waiting days, and I told him my trick. He said, "Floating sodas! Yeah, man, we all used to do it." I guess I'm not so clever after all, but I did learn a cool nickname for my thievery. Story 71. So, Domino's Pizza has a thing called lava crunch cakes. Lava crunch cakes come in sets of 2. The only kind of box they make is a 2-pack. When they were first released, I noticed that when I tried to order them, there was a drop-down menu where I could select the quantity of crunch cakes in the order. The menu had the numbers 1, 2, 4, 6, etc., all the way up to 20 or so. I selected 1, thinking that meant one order of crunch cakes, a set of 2. But I noticed that when I added it to the cart, it cost $0.00. So I went back and selected 2, and this time it showed $4.99 in the cart. I'm thinking, okay, so the number isn't how many orders you want, but how many individual crunch cakes you want. I didn't know you could order just one crunch cake, and why does it cost no money when I add it to the cart? So I revert it back to one cake and place the order to see what happens. My pizza shows up, and also it looks like a 2-pack of crunch cakes. No charge. But when I open the pack, there's only one crunch cake inside. As I said, they don't even make an individual crunch cake box. Intent on further exploring my exploit, the next time I order Domino's, I add the single free crunch cake, but this time I change the quantity to 2. Sure enough, my order comes with 2 crunch cakes in one normal box. So now I know a couple of things. I know that single crunch cakes are free. I know that I can alter the quantity field after selecting the single cake and it's still free. I know that orders for even numbers of cakes get combined into the normal box. And I know that the employees filling the order either don't notice or don't really care. Armed with this information, I see how far I can push it. Next order, effing 10 crunch cakes. Keep in mind, I'm getting the 2 for $5.99 deal most of the time, so my total with tax and delivery is like $15.35 or something like that, for 10 crunch cakes and 2 pizzas. And they bring me 10 crunch cakes and 2 pizzas, and no one seems to give a F. So for the next 3 months or so, I'm living in crunch cake Valhalla. I'm ordering Domino's like 3 times a week because why not? Free mother effing crunch cakes totally offset my pizza cost. I'm asking homeless guys on the street if they want some crunch cakes. I have so many crunch cakes. You know what's awesome? Crunch cake in a bowl with a half pint of Ben & Jerry's on top. I ate crunch cakes until the words crunch cakes didn't even look like words to me anymore. After a while, I can't believe they haven't spotted my exploit. I'm thinking, the dream has got to end. So I mentioned to my girlfriend at the time that I think I should write an email to Domino's, let them know about the error. Maybe they'll give me a free pizza or life card or something awesome like that for saving them so much money on crunch cake hackers like me. She dissuades me, convincing me that Domino's is a large, heartless corporation, and they probably won't give me crap, and fix the crunch cake exploit so we don't get any more free crunch cakes. So I stay quiet and continue gorging myself on crunch cakes until the website gets updated a month or so later, and the loophole was closed. To this day, I kind of wonder what would have happened had I told Domino's what was up. Yeah, I think this guy just really likes to say the words crunch cakes. Crunch cakes, crunch cakes, crunch cakes. Jeez, how many times did I have to say that reading that freaking post? And I don't even like crunch cakes. Moving on. Story 72. Late to the thread, but whatever. My scam was lucrative. In the early 90s, I worked in a podunk off-brand movie theater chain in the South. Through the week, ticket prices were like maybe $4 for a movie. On Friday and Saturday, the ticket prices were maybe $7. During that time, the theater I worked at used a giant ticket roll that the person working the window would manually tear off for you. Since we were a small-time operation with maybe only 5 or 6 screens, there was no budget or need for a person to stand and tear tickets just inside the door. Instead, the window person gave you your ticket half and you were on your way. I would always make sure to work the window one of the weekend days, if not both. When someone would come to the window, I would tear their ticket, give them half, and keep the other half hidden. When the next person came to the window with their $7, I would act like I was tearing something and hand them the other half of the ticket I'd set aside. I got David Blaine level of sleight of hand trying not to get caught. $7 in my pocket, every other person. 300 to 500 people on a decent weekend. I would have so much cash stuffed into my pockets that I used to wear shorts under my work pants so that I could transfer the money into the shorts pockets when they got too full. 2 or 3 times a night, I would take a cigarette break and transfer wads of cash to my car. I was 17 and living like a goddamn rock star off of my $6 an hour theater job. My mom actually sat me down and asked me if I was dealing drugs. I was, also. And I told her that I was using my work money to buy cases of NBA basketball cards and flipping the super valuable inserts for huge profit. This was in the Jordan, Shaq, Penny Hardaway days, and Topps had these inserts called Gold Beam or something like that each insert was going for $100 to $300 depending on rarity. She told her friends that I was a genius. Story 73. This will probably get buried, but many years ago, a friend and I were playing an online MUD, text-based MMORPG. I think I was like 15 years old or something. I think it was Imperium or Imperia or something like that. Anyway, a thing we normally do is wander around super unpopular areas and explore. Well, this time we were wandering around this place that's kind of like a newbie area, except nobody goes there except to RP sex or something. We found this guest giver that gave a middling money reward for a simple fetch quest, except the guest giver wasn't scripted properly, so you could do the quest infinitely. Additionally, we discovered we could permanently move the fetch item right into the same room as the guest giver and get like hundreds of thousands of money in hours. So we did that, and we scripted the whole thing. Then, after a few days of this, we bought like all the pay-to-win currency on the open market and made the price of the whatever currency stupidly high, causing everyone to either 1. Be really angry at us, 2. Make alt accounts and try to seduce us. I had never gotten so many virtual invites for text-based sex ever. The forums erupted about how expensive the P2W currency was, and the game kind of broke for a while. Then one day a mod appeared and turned us into bushes. The end. Story 74. Went to a big-name department store with a couple of friends many years ago. They had to buy slacks for their upcoming school year, Catholic high school. We see that the Dockers were on sale, so each of my 4 friends picks up 5 pair, 1 for each day of the week, of khaki-colored slacks. Go to the counter and pay and are told by the cashier that she didn't have the machine to take off the alarm since it was the old style and they recently converted to the ink-type magnetic anti-theft devices. She instructs us to exit the store and go into the security office, which is next to the elevators. The person in that office will remove them if you just show them the receipt. We go to the office, show the receipt, and the anti-theft devices are removed. The guy thinks it's odd that we all bought the same colored slacks, so my friend explains to him that they're for school that has a dress code. We go outside, and as we wait for the elevator, the effing light bulb goes off in my head. We take out all the pants and put them in another bag that we had. Go back into the store and fill up the bags again with 5 pair each. Go back to the office and show the guy the receipt. He says, "Didn't we just do this?" I quickly respond that at this price they were a steal, so we went back for some more. He laughs, unlocks the devices, and we leave. Probably would have gone for another round, but they were out of the sizes we needed. Story 75. I never took advantage of this because I'm an honest moron, but everyone else I worked with did. I worked in sales for a company that offered a pretty simple month-to-month service for small businesses. It cost $10 per month or $110 per year. We had the option to charge a setup fee or give the first month for free. Now, how our commission worked was we got $10 for every monthly account we set up, $15 for every yearly, and we also got to keep 100% of any setup fee. Weird, I know. It was a killer plan for us. Someone found out if you charged a $10 setup fee with a first month free promotion on a yearly plan, the result was $15 for the yearly plus another $10 for the setup, or $25 commission when we used to only expect $15, and the result ended up being $110, precisely what the customer expected. Win-win. Now again, I thought this was shady, so never did this, but everyone else on my team jumped on it. Management found out when commission payouts almost doubled team-wide, obviously. It took them 4 to 5 months to catch on, though. We got dragged into a room and yelled at for almost an hour, but the end result was, "Don't do it again, carry on." So everyone got to keep their huge payouts with no repercussions. Bonus. I got fired about a year later to be made an example for the rest of the team to get their crap together, despite doing nothing but help the company continuously in an honest way during my time there. Story 76. About 20 years ago, I worked part-time in the reception at an airport hotel, usually evening/night shifts. The hotel was set up with one of those back then standard pay-per-view TV systems, i.e. a few crappy TV channels for free and then hundreds of movie, cartoon channels, etc. that you had to pay ridiculous prices to use, and many accidentally activated and got charged for. Since the evening/night shifts were understaffed, we also had to deal with first-line support issues like pay-per-view TV not functioning correctly, etc., and hence were given full access to the admin systems for these. After having worked there for a couple of weeks, I discovered that the pay-per-view admin system was not connected in any way to the billing system. Hence, if I would activate a channel for a customer from the admin system, it would not register in their bill as long as I didn't manually put it into billing. From then on, I started activating pay-per-view channel for free for any customer that was friendly, seemed kind, and had a rough day. Fex missed their flight or came with their kids. Activated all the cartoon channels. Most were super happy for the small comp that I gave them, and I'd like to believe I made their day and stay just a little bit better. Story 77. Not really a loophole, more like an accidental life hack. In Denmark, Domino's isn't that popular due to so many other good pizza places. I got nostalgic for Domino's and accidentally, or maybe not, can't think of why I did it, I checked the send me offers box when ordering online. Since then, I've gotten like 4 to 5 free pizzas from them in the last year without ever buying one. Usually with the message, "We haven't seen you in a while and we miss you." Yes, Domino's in Denmark is desperate for customers. Sometimes they send me free pizzas to combine with a purchase of minimum 100 KR, $15. But once in a while I get a free one, no strings attached. I just always get the free pizza and check the box so they won't stop sending me offers and coupons. For some great coincidence, they've usually sent me one of those coupons when I'm completely broke, so it's been the one proper meal of that week. So they'll always have a place in my heart for keeping me fed while I was a poor as hell student.